6:03. I'd like to call to order the June 18th, 2024 Joaquin Public School Board of Education Student Achievement Meeting, Student Achievement Committee meeting. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. McBride,
Yes.
Mr. Riddle,
Present.
Ms. Hannah, Ms. Gonzalez, Ms. Fabian, Ms. Lenzing,
Present.
President Ewing.
Here, we do have a quorum. This is our crew tonight. Ms. Fabian, Hannah, and Gonzalez all let me know before the meeting that they will not be able to join. With that, we have item 3A, approval of the May 21st, 2024 Student Achievement Minutes.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Riddle,
Second.
second by Ms. Lenzing. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. We're going to go all the way down and start off with the discussion item so we can get that one knocked out.
Okay.
Mr. Cesario.
So the presentation.
Correct.
So, okay, good evening, President Ewing, Superintendent, members of the board, members of the community. This evening I'm going to ask Ms. Amanda Petty to come and present on our 5 Essentials report. Thank you.
Good evening, board, superintendent, colleagues, members of the community. We recently received our 5 essentials for the 2023-24 school year. These just arrived last week, Thursday, and so they are hot off the press and wanted to share them with you as quickly as we were able. Just as a reminder, for background knowledge, the 5 Essentials survey is an evidence-based system that is used to drive school improvement and reflection across the nation. It is a research-based survey, and it is one of the tools required to be used by Illinois State Board of Education. It's a system that is based, thank you, Lee, is founded on more than 22 years of research by University of Chicago, and it does help support and paint a comprehensive picture from the school and district level in terms of what is working and what can continue to improve. Next slide. Again, just a kind of a snapshot in terms of where it is utilized. It's used over 6,000 schools across 22 states and used with over 10 million students, teachers, and parents. So it's a very comprehensive and robust community of schools that utilize this survey. Who takes the 5 essentials? We have teachers pre-K through 12th grade. They are surveyed related to topics around instructional practice, professional development, and the school as a workplace. Students in grades 4 through 12 take this, and we learn more about their experiences, their attitudes, and activities within the school. And we also have parents that have the option to take it. The parent survey asks questions about their overall relationship and engagement and involvement at the school level. There are 5 categories in the 5 essentials. 1 is ambitious instruction, 2 is collaborative teachers, 3 is effective leaders, 4 is involved families, and 5 is supportive environment, just as a recap. So you can see our results. I don't know if you can slide up a little bit, Lee, where you can see the numbers on the very bottom. Perfect, thank you. Last year, 2023 is on the left. This year, 2024 is on the right, and you can see that we have a consistent status for this current school year as moderately organized. Next slide. This slide captures our 2-year trend and change. The categories on the right-hand side are the thresholds. Red, the darkest red, where we have 0 to 19 being the weakest, all the way up through 100 where you're very strong in the dark green category. We are in the neutral category, that yellow color, and so as you can see for the 5 essentials going across, we increased in 3 of the 5 essentials as a district overall. Effective leaders, involved families, and collaborative teachers all show areas of growth. School environment maintained the same, and we had a very slight decrease of 1 point in ambitious instruction. Some of the key highlights to point out are the highest categories. So where is Waukegan performing the highest? You can see those areas there. English and math instruction, parent influence on decision making in the schools, quality, professional development, and instructional leadership are areas that we scored high in. Next slide, please. Areas that have improved the most, that we have seen the most jumps in, and the metric, 10 points, 9 points, 5 points, 5 points, 4 points, you can see the categories that we have seen increased and improved the most in. Where are we performing low? You can see these are areas, again, these all fall within that those different color bands of not yet in that neutral category. So these are areas of things to focus towards. Safety, That is coming from the student lens as well, which really describes how students feel within the school, in the classroom, traveling to and from school, within the school, different aspects of the school environment. Quality of student discussion, collective responsibility, school commitment, and teacher-to-parent trust are areas that we will continue to work towards strategies for improvement. Here, there's quite a few pieces of information that I wanted to point out. Each school's name is linked. If you see the blue link on each school's name, that will provide you a dashboard summary of each school's dashboard over time for the past, I think it's 3 to 4 years, so you can see each school if you want to dig into each school individually and find out where are they making improvements, where are they not yet making improvements, and where have they seen decreases. Each school's dashboard summary is linked in there for transparency and for people who would like to have more information about certain specific schools. The columns across show the response rates, so you can see the percentage of students who completed the survey, as well as the number breakdown in terms of how many students out of the student body who participated in that. As well as the parents, which is the number of households that are part of that school community. I do not have the number of teachers, the raw data yet. Several times the teachers or staff who take the survey utilize a provisional link, which is then later sorted at the state level, and then we get those numbers, but we won't get the teacher numbers in terms of the actual raw data more towards the fall. Next slide. You can see more of our elementary schools. Again, the blue links are there for you to dig into school-specific reports, as well as the information about their percentage participation for each of the 3 stakeholder groups. Next slide, please. This is the last of our elementary schools. Same format. Next slide. And the last slide captures our middle school and our high school. And again, the links are there for you to dig into any school that you would like to learn a little bit more about. Next slide. Again, these are the 5 ratings. The school can be considered well organized all the way down through not yet organized. Next slide. This past year, in comparing 2023 results to 2024 results, we had 2 more schools considered well organized. We had 1 more school considered to be organized. We stayed the same for schools considered to be moderately organized. 2 less schools are considered partially organized, and 1 less school is considered to be not yet organized. Next slide. This is the breakdown overall. This is a 3-year trend, so you can see growth over time for our schools, their 2022 rating, their 2023 rating, and then the color-coded 2024 rating. If it's green, their rating improved from the year prior. If it is blue, it means their rating stayed the same from the year prior. And if it is red, it means their rating decreased from the year prior. Next slide, please. Same format. You can see which schools increased, which schools stayed the same, and which schools decreased their rating. Next slide, please. Overall, in summary, we had 9 of our 22 schools improve their rating. We had 10 of our 22 schools maintain their rating, and we had 3 of our 22 schools decrease in their rating. And again, this data is fresh. We just received it last week, and the individual dashboard reports that are linked, I think, are very helpful to see and paint a picture of the school in terms of areas of success and areas of next steps for the leadership team at each individual school to reflect on and strategize towards. Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Riddle.
Yes, I noticed that it says that schools that are at or above 3 are 10 times more likely to improve. So I guess that metric is something that I'm looking at, the ones that are only partially organized or not yet organized. Those ones we're concentrating on to get them up to at least a 3.
Right, so once you have 3 of those squares color-coded to be beyond yellow, where they start to get light green or darker green, when you have 3 of those practices deeply embedded into your system and your school level, the research says that that provides opportunity for school improvement to really take root and to see some great things happen for students and the community. And so when we are working with our new area superintendents and the team, the academic team looked at the data, looked at our schools, looked at our understanding of what the schools need, and talked through how we would want the area superintendents to approach working with schools who may have seen a dip or a decrease, as well as looking at those schools who may have maintained, but it's not a rating we want to maintain. We want to see
Right,
those
right.
ratings increase. So we're being strategic around how areas, academic team members, et cetera, will be able to spend more time and intentional time with leadership at the level, at the schools who show a need.
So that statistic that says schools that are at or above 3 are 10 times more likely to improve, that's based on this essential survey itself, not on some other study. I
This is
presume,
based
right?
on the University of Chicago research related to this specific study around these elements of what school improvement needs to consist of. So
Right.
it's not necessarily
But-
about the
but-
survey, but it's about these components that need to be part of a school. And when these components of these 5 essentials, if at least 3 of them are alive and well.
Okay, so it's not based, I was wondering if it was based on their own statistic that to see schools moving up, schools that were below, like in a 4 or 5, were not moving up to a 3 or a 2.
It's based
Or-
on the body of research around what needs
Lot
to
of
be in
research.
place for an effective school. And if you have at least 3 of those aspects in place, the likelihood of having outcomes for students is
Okay.
more likely.
All right,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Patty, I noticed that 3 of our 22 decreased their E rating. Why is that?
There could be a lot of reasons why. That's one of the big pieces. Once we have this data, is for the school principal and to take that back to their school improvement teams and kind of process through what is this data telling us, what is this data meaning for us, what is our interpretation of what these results mean. It could be a variety of factors. If the school spent time helping the staff understand what the 5 Essentials survey looks like, feels like, sounds like, looks like, that helps the staff be prepared for not swaying and teaching them the survey and pre-test, giving them the answers, but preparing them for understanding what the scope of the survey is and what the questions sound like, what to expect. Principals spend time with their staff kind of unearthing and preparing staff for that. It could be, as an example, and I'll speak about Whittier because Whittier is one of the schools that I specifically supported. They were really in the deep end with going through their international baccalaureate authorization, and through that process, inadvertently, you can get tunnel vision and you can get really focused on getting one thing going. And they did a great job with that, and we don't want to take that away from them. But in other aspects, because they were so focused on this process that they are really proud of, there may have been other aspects of the school that didn't get as much time and attention as maybe they needed. And so now that they received their authorization and they're proud of that and they're going to be focusing on that implementation aspect, they can now take the stress off of let's get authorized and get back to some of the practices that maybe weren't as deeply implemented because they kind of had blinders on their focus. So that could be one reason.
So it sounds like to me just the opposite of what you just expressed to Mr. Riddle to some degree. You following me?
Can you clarify a little
I
bit
say
for
it
me?
sounds like to me just the opposite of what you just expressed to Mr. Riddles. Mr. Riddles wanted to know, asked the question, looking out, you can see that the school's going to increase, and you gave him an explanation sort of why. So I'm just thinking it's just the opposite of the students that the 3 schools that you talked about decreased. It doesn't make sense to you, what I'm trying to say?
It does. So I think that if I'm hearing you correctly, and make sure if I'm not, please, let me know. I think that a school is a very complex organization, and you have to be spinning lots of plates at all times. You have to be thinking about your environment, your students, your families, your curriculum, your classrooms, your teachers, the morale, the culture, climate, logistics. And so when you're juggling all those plates, you have to do all of those and do those well. And if you focus too long on one plate, the other plates can slip off, right? And then you have to figure out how to get them back spinning. And so for schools that can balance those 5 plates and keep those aspects moving, we're seeing some strong improvements and some strong things move forward. And in schools that have seen some dips, those are things that we have to circle back on and make sure that we're able to juggle those simultaneously.
So the recipe for one school don't work for all the schools?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Would you also state that there's a correlation when we have steady leadership at a building over time? Does that also help with the ratings? Because I
Absolutely.
do see one of the ratings we have new leadership at.
In 2 of our
So
schools, there's new
I think-
leadership. In 2 of the schools that declined, we do have a principal who is in their first year and then in their second year. So there is some leadership growth as well.
All right.
Mr. Riddle?
Yeah, so I guess I'm looking at, for instance, Whittier,
Okay.
which is, has been working really hard to bring in a new program, their IB program. Then they were inspected recently, and that, they had to make a lot of compliances. They had a team in to inspect.
Right.
And they were approved.
Right.
And yet, under the 5 essentials, they're not organized. But is some of that with the fact that this is people reporting, this is students reporting? How do you explain that? A school that went through a very rigorous program and was approved and praised for what it did. And I know they're starting a new venture, but how do they get such a poor rating on the 5 essentials?
So, and do you have the breakdown for each one for Whittier? But I can tell you right now that one of the things is that just like Amanda said, if you're focusing on one area and you're hyper focused on one area, you
Right.
might do really well on that.
Yeah.
Also, undertaking new programming, people feel uncomfortable. There's a lot of issues with that, and you talk about the difference between having consistent leadership and new leadership. People are getting used to one another, and also a new
Right.
way of
Doing
implementing programming in the school, and so oftentimes that comes out in some of the survey results.
Okay, and actually,
so-
I misspoke. They
Thanks.
were partially organized, from organized to partially organized. So I guess exactly what you're saying makes some sense to me, because there's some concern among some of the students and staff. What's going on? We're getting a new program. We're doing things differently. So I would look for that to change next year.
Yeah, and if we look at this, the collaborative teachers is the one that's red, and oftentimes when you're going through a change like this, you're
Yes.
going to see that,
Right.
and so it's part of taking this. The next step is to take this to dig down deeper into
Right.
each of those areas to actually look at the items and analyze them to determine what we need to do to move forward. So the ILT would take a look at it with the principal. They would in turn do that at grade level teams to talk about, here's the analysis of this. What are we seeing? What can we do to move forward and to improve on this area?
Yes. And when was this survey taken too? That might make a difference, because
Sure. The window opened the end of January, early February, and lasted until the day before spring break.
Okay.
So winter,
Right.
midwinter.
Thank you.
And to even add context, to Mr. Riddle, your point, it's always going to be somewhat subjective, is because it's rating sentiment, right? They're not going in and doing an evaluation. This is how the individuals in that school feel about that school,
Right.
right? And so you can see all of the great things that are happening, but if a parent doesn't necessarily feel that,
Know
if
that.
a student is not necessarily understanding the change, or the teachers don't support it, right, that can show up in the numbers. So I'm not saying that's the case for Whittier, but do want us to understand that the 5 Essential Survey is a survey that gauges sentiment, not necessarily what's actually happening.
Actually happened.
Ms. Lindsay, I got a couple points, and then I see you, Mr. Edwards. Go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
Okay, thank you. I did want to, I'm going to highlight a couple of things.
Okay.
I do want to honor John Clark Elementary, because their parent engagement score is 78.8%.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is a well-engaged parental community.
Correct.
I'm sure the school sent many follow-ups. I received several follow-ups from my school to say, please take this survey. So I think that's fabulous. Washington also did a great job coming in the early 60s, like 62.5. And then the rest, they're hovering, some like hover around 50, and then we get to the 25% in the parent score, right? So I'm curious to know what types of collaboration is happening between the schools at the elementary level to say, hey, we got close to 80% of our parents to engage. These are the tactics we have. What sorts of conversations are the principals having around this data to try to get more parents to provide that feedback, right? Because to the points that were already raised, it's going to be subjective for the people who talk. And so there's a wider group of parents that we're missing in several of the schools. So I want to make sure we're targeting in that way. And then this is a call out to the community and our parents, because as our students get older, we see that engagement start to drop and drop. The high school, they had 100 and 30-some parents, I
Right.
think, engage with the survey, but that's only 4% of our high school parents engaged. We need all of our families engaged from pre-K, please take advantage of that program, all the way through high school so that we can better gauge what the needs are, how you're feeling, where we can do better. So that's a call to the community to do. I also wanted to talk about the plates. So as we're talking about communication, if there are some schools that are spinning all of their plates well,
Yeah.
every school is going to have different needs and different higher profile things to tackle. But it's the management of all of the plates that I want to make sure all of our schools are talking to each other about on ways that they have found to be successful. Now, the success may look different at, let's say, Carmen Buckner versus North Elementary, but Whittier can say, oh, I really like how that's going there. That aligns with how we operate, so let's see what we can implement here. So again, it's that communication that's a huge piece so we can all be successful. So do we know our principals, when they're having their meetings with each other, talking about the 5 essentials, or is it just they're taking it back to their schools?
I think that principals network very often through just through how they connect with one another. I know during our PLCs this past spring, principals were collaborating frequently around aspects of instruction, assessment, curriculum. I can't say that 5 Essentials was a talking point that we intentionally had as an agenda item, where we could say, what's your strategy for getting parents in? But I do know that principals network very, very often. We have weekly Monday calls to go over things that are coming up and things like that, and they often share strategies and tips and tricks with one another.
Okay, so hopefully that becomes part of the conversation so we can get better engagement. And then just tying, this will be my last point for now. So tying back to the consistent leadership being an aspect, we need to also, as a district, find ways to ensure we have consistent leadership and everyone's supported, and not even just leadership. A lot of parents, when they give their scores, their main touch point is their teacher. So finding ways to have consistent teachers in the classroom is also going to be helpful for us. So those, I think, are feeder pieces into this larger picture that we're not explicitly talking about. So I'm excited to see how we can get, and I understand there's the 80% retention rate, but on on an individual level or school level,
Sure.
families aren't feeling that. So we need to figure out where that disconnect is. Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is a takeaway. If we pull up, Lee, if we go back to the PowerPoint and let's see if we go to page 5. Keep going, sorry.
Hopefully it's the one I forgot.
Keep going. Keep going. This next one. All right. So if our students in our community and even our staff are consistently saying that safety is a major concern, superintendent, before the school year starts, sometime in July, student achievement meeting, there has to be a plan, a clear plan of articulation to the community about what we're doing to improve and address the climate and safety. We all know that you cannot learn, but it is more difficult to learn when you don't feel safe, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is more difficult to keep staff if staff don't feel safe. It is more difficult to do all those things. So I won't belabor the point, but I do know, and I'm speaking, I hope, on behalf of the board, that in July we'd like to see our safety plan for this upcoming year and what changes, right? We talk about that SWOT analysis, but what were some of the things that we learned this year, even using some of the information and data from the 5 essentials. So if it's being afraid of walking home, what are we doing as a school district? How are we partnering with the community? If it's the fights that are happening in the schools, what are we doing to proactively prevent those at the start of the year so that we set the culture and the climate off correct? So again, I know we have another meeting and multiple agenda items, but seeing that safety is our lowest category overall, which I would honestly agree, I expect to kind of see the plan.
Sorry, just to add on to that, Board President, sometimes we're talking about safety in the context of the physical buildings where it's the cameras, it's the vegetables, but we also have to talk about the mental health safety aspects for both our students and staffs, right? And so Board President did touch on that with like walking home and fights. There's the mental health component to that I want to make sure we're including in that presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Edwards.
Okay, I want to know, first of all, who is in charge of doing these surveys? You know, I know this comes from the state, but when the state send it out, what department does this?
So the process, each principal receives their information in terms of their staff roster, the links for their parents, the links for their staff. Each teacher receives a link directly to their email to access the survey. Principals provide time during Wednesday school improvement meetings to provide staff with a time to take the survey. Parents receive a link. Principals also communicate that link directly to their families through Class Dojo, Remind, School Messenger. They have many principals have a lot of parent events, carnivals, fairs, book fairs, student showcases of learning to make sure that they have a good representation of parents coming into the school. They have support staff in hand in the cafeteria or the gyms with iPads to help make sure parents can access the survey, and then students are provided time during the school day to take the survey.
Okay, the reason why I asked that is because I had to contact the board president. I went and looked for the survey myself, and I was concerned about it because I had a principal in Zion reach out to me. And so I've come to this board meeting quite often, and I talk about how parents not understanding how to navigate you guys' website. It's a mess. We talk about communication all the time. And so I'm glad you mentioned the events that these principals have. I haven't seen them at all the schools. And so my point that I want to make tonight is this. Whatever director is in charge of this is what I talk about when I say boots on the ground. Being in this building all the time, all week, and not going to these schools and communicating with these principals is beyond me. They asking for help. We have them terrified at some point to even come up here to speak. Nobody is going there. And so although you guys are giving this presentation, it's guys like me that talks to these principals and they tell me something different. And so now I'm here with this concern. And so when we talking about communication, especially with something this essential, I want to see the district put something district-wide together to engage this community, to want to get involved, because you guys should want to know how they feel more than the state. And I hope going forward, we don't wait till the state puts something like this together before we address it. Because this is something that I would like to be seeing done every year.
It is done every year.
This is the first year I've seen it, really. I'm not saying that it's not, but I'm saying as far as promoting it out in the community, it being seen, this is the first time I've seen it. And I don't see it often in Waukegan, and so I say to you guys all the time, Facebook, social media is not the only way. Let's go back to old school. Let's send mail-ins. Let's put this information in hot spots where we know the community be to try to engage them to be more involved in something like this. That's all I'm asking.
Thank you.
It's a little bit of work. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. I see I had Chet's hand, and then I'll go.
One more thing before you go, Chester. We talk about safety, and I want to mention that real quick because we always talk about safety, right? We're not going to stop the fights in the school. We know that. You're a fool if you think he is. It's not going to happen. But I have to say this because tonight we're going to talk about more money, right? When you're talking about safety, have we talked about their pay? They probably some of the lowest paid people, and I'm not saying they didn't just get a raise.
That's all, Mr. Edwards. So I think pay is important.
Yes, but
in the union contract.
Okay.
So tell them to bring it up at the next contract.
yeah. So I just want to finish this because one thing my father used to say to me: when you pay for cheap, that's what you get. And so when I walked in Brookside, respectfully to the safety, when I walked in Brookside, it's people up in there old enough to be my grandmama. What do y'all think they gonna do with them 16 and 14-year-old kids. I get it. We don't want to discriminate against nobody because of age, but we got to start being realistic, man. Because I fear for some of them that's in that building with the way some of our kids act. And I'm just waiting on it to happen because it's going to happen eventually. We don't talk about what happened at that Brookside often and all of the fights and some of those seniors that's in that building, someone is going to get hurt. So as we doing this report, and if Mr. Wilson hear me, because I know he will, let's look at how we place in the security. That is important. I want some of them young bodies in Brookside with them young babies because we separated them. 9th and 10th over here, 11th and 12th over here, which still not making a lot of sense to me because now them newcomers have no guidance whatsoever. Y'all have to really look at that. Some of them cannot move fast enough to stop some of them fights when them fights happen. And so the ones that's over there that are equipped to deal with it, they are tired because they have to do more to compensate for them. So let's look at it. And again, I will say something. I'm going to find out who their union president is because they need to get more money. You pay them better, they going to work harder. And when some of y'all ain't doing nothing and they short over there, how about y'all get a security jacket and go over there and partake with them? Let them know that this is a team and we work together. And that also shows them how much you appreciate them. You give out all these stipends and bonuses. Give them a stipend just to say thank you. They the front line and they do the most work and they deal with the kids the most. That's how you keep them. And that's why they're going to work hard. Mr. Wilson, thank you, sir.
You do for the people on the camera. There are people listening online, they can't hear you when you speak up.
What I'm saying, could you hear me? Okay, to get a better response from the parents on the survey, would it be better to send it through the mail so they can mail it back to the district?
Ms. Patty, you can speak to about how the survey is taken and where they can access it and how it's available. You don't, not right now, but once Mr. Sabecki's done with his comment.
All right, I got two things. One thing about that survey, a lot of parents ain't sitting there for 40, 45 minutes to an hour to fill out a survey. That survey is way too long. I know, I've taken it many a times. And then people just start checking whatever box. That's the first thing. The second thing, I want to, under the middle school, high school response rates, the teachers at 4 of our schools are 99.9%.
So the data from the teachers, and I think you might have stepped out, Mr. Sabecki, when I covered this, so just I'll reiterate it and then I'll clarify if you have a further question if I don't answer it. The response rate right now is based off of what we have access to from the 5 Essentials data that's been provided to us from 5 Essentials. The actual raw numbers will be provided to us from the Illinois State Board of Education in the fall when the state report card information comes out. Many teachers had to take the provisional link and not the direct link associated with their school. Sometimes the data transfer with email addresses doesn't always go through directly, and so many staff members had to use the provisional link, which means that it just goes into one general catch-all, and then they have to sort it back out to individual schools. So we'll have that's the percentage that we have currently, and then we'll have that updated information once the state releases the raw data in the fall.
All right, well, my question is, it still says 99.9%, so that means you might have missed 1 or 2, according to what it says, the numbers. So my thing is, a lot of our middle schools and high schools had online teachers. Did they take the survey? Were they included in the survey?
No, they were not. No, they were not.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, then you're not going to get accurate data.
That's a good question. But the folks who were in the room that were, if they were a teacher in that building, they took it, or a para, yeah.
So it's only based off our employees,
Yeah.
right? So we contract through Elevate or other organizations. So I'm going to just say Elevate. So those aren't our employees. Those are Elevate employees. Our employees take the survey.
And that's my point. We have a lot of contracted people within our schools. If we are not getting actual data from the people, even though the ones in our schools are taking it, we have a lot of contracted employees. So that data is skewed. A lot of those people have never even stepped a foot in our building. So they don't know about a lot of the stuff that happens in our building.
We can
Yeah.
take that question back. We can take that question back to 5 Essentials and pose that to them.
But if you have, just hypothetically, at school X, you have 100 employees, right? So 100 employees are assigned to school X. Based off that, that would be your percentage. However, I may have vacancies for 120, and 20 of those could be Elevate. So the percentage is based off the number of teachers that you have in the building, not those vacancies, if it makes sense. But let them take that back to see, because it's based off the actual staff you have.
And I understand that, well, if y'all would let me finish. But my point is, we need to do a better job at staffing these with actual bodies in our classrooms, with teachers, or we're not going to get the actual data. This is the responses we're going to get.
Yeah.
No matter what. We have to put, like Ray always says, boots on the ground, and let's get recruiting. We always recruit all these administrative positions. We need to find a way to recruit the teachers and keep them in the classrooms, is my point.
Yep. And
Good
so
point.
if we get through this one, we got a presentation specifically on that and operations. So
Quick clarification.
go ahead,
then.
Ms. Lindsay.
So in terms of staff, is it just teaching staff or is it support staff as well? So when we look at our paraprofessionals, when we look at our speech and language pathologists, our nurses,
They're
our
included.
secretaries,
They're-
everybody's included.
Yeah, paraprofessionals and teachers, social workers, speech paths, they're all included.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, to that point, it would be beneficial to
understand.
get the larger perspective because
Of the
we
other-
have a lot of contracted staff, even with stepping stones, Elevate, et cetera. So that'd be great.
Yeah, it would be great, but I just want to manage expectations. The 5 Essentials survey will not allow any district to do that. It can only be your staff. So we couldn't allow stepping stones or Elevate teachers to take the survey, just so you know. This survey rosters come from the state of Illinois. And if I'm incorrect, Amanda, please jump in, but, so,
So the question is still going back to the state to say, can we expand it to get a broader perspective? Yeah.
you can ask the question. I can tell you now it's going to be a hard no, because I believe it's going to be a hard no. I've been working with 5 Essentials prior to me coming to the district in the city that I left. It's really geared toward your staff in-house, not contracted staff through second parties. But go ahead and ask the question, but I know they're really firm on ensuring they have the rosters from a district.
Real quick, I'm sorry, dear, you opened the door, but we pay you a lot of money, honey, for you to be able to create a survey like this for our own self. We don't have to ask the state for anything. We can create our own 5 Essentials. There's nothing that prohibits us from doing it. And again, this is information that we should want to know to help better our district, our schools.
So, Mr. Edwards, I only want clarification because it's
Yeah.
an important point. We do want to know, and part of the survey fatigue is when we send multiple surveys, that's why you don't have people doing them. But also, this is what they use on the school state report card. So we do it every year, and it's not that we came and Teresa said, hey, let's do the 5 essential surveys because I did it where I came from. The state mandates that we take this, and they actually use this to calculate our scores in the fall. So I get your point. We can do other surveys, and we can explore other survey options, but this is the one that they're trying to create consistency. Is because, to your point, Mrs. Sabecki, which is why a lot of times they say no when you try and make it super specific, is because they're evaluating all of the schools or using the same questions, using the same language. So it's not to try and not add bias to it and all of those other things. So you want to have specific questions, one, so you can track year to year. So I do want to say that is your point is well taken. We can do our other surveys. Even if we decided to do other surveys, we would still do the 5 essentials because it's required.
Right. I'm not saying not to take it. I'm saying let's create our own so that we can know better data. Because again, as she said, the state doesn't allow us to use the contractors that we bring in. And we know we have a lot of those because y'all keep saying it at every meeting that we're short staffed. So again, what I want to see is us create our own and not make it so long, because as he stated, I'm not filling out nothing for 45 minutes, especially if it's free.
Mr. Edwards, I can respond to that. If you were to do a Google search right now on how long this survey takes, it would pop up 30 minutes. It really takes about 15 to 20. I've taken it every year for my student, and just so if you were to take it, it takes about 15 to 20 minutes. But if you Googled it, it would say the time is about 30 minutes, hypothetically. The second component about this survey, it is not controlled by the district. So it's not like we control the survey or we have access to the results. All the results go through the 5 essentials and are calculated and put together. The reports are put together through the state. So there's no, I guess, no hands-on from the district of us controlling the survey, looking at the survey results prior to everything is calculated through the state. So all of this goes through the state so that we can get that view of what exactly and what areas that we need to work on or focus on. Just so you know, it's not something the district controls as far as the surveys.
All right, real quick.
Final comment.
So it takes you 15 minutes. You can read in that. A lot of our parents can't read or don't understand the questions in that. So it might take you 15 minutes, but other parents that take the surveys in that, and kids and families, it takes a lot longer. Because a lot of them, not all of them can read. The second point, what Ray Ray's trying to say, is we as a district can do our own 5 essentials. Like our elementaries, they have 4 quarters that we grade them on. We should do a survey each quarter to see where we're improving on, where we're staying the same, and where we're dropping, so we can adjust per quarter. Our middle schools and high schools have 2 grading periods and do the same thing for those buildings. Then we can adjust and see where we're at. If you do a survey in between those, then you can see where it's changing year to year, quarter to quarter. That's what I think Ray Ray's trying to say. We understand that the 5 essentials, yes, through the state, it's going to be done every year. But we can do one as a district ourselves. Many of them, if you want, like I said, elementaries are 4 quarters. Do one every quarter. Junior high and high school, do one each semester. And then you could see where the differences are, and you can make them a lot shorter, and maybe you'll get a lot more parent involvement. Because as it states with the parent involvement on these ones, you're not really getting the actual data because you don't see where the parents' points of view are coming because our numbers are so low. So if all the parents, according to these numbers, took the survey, every one of those can be in poor shape, for all we know.
I think what would be a good point to look at is to look statistically throughout the state and at districts. What is the average percentage of parents actually taking the survey at the elementary, middle school, and high school? Because I do know that those percentages are very low statewide, and I know that our principals do a very intentional job, and I'm looking at a few of them here, with ensuring that we're engaging parents on the survey. So I think looking at those numbers to paint a picture of what that looks like in districts and state would give us
We'll be able to get that in the
some information,
in
not
the
a
fall
full
for
picture,
district
but yeah.
we can do a comparison of our district response rates for parents versus statewide response rates for parents. That is available on the SB report card every year, so we can look at that historically as well as this upcoming fall. There is a requirement to receive a 20% minimum threshold to have valid and accurate data, to have a representation, a good representation pool of your families is a minimum threshold by the state of 20%, and we strive every year to get as close to that as we can.
And I will agree with the sentiment. We need to ensure that we're getting more parents engaged. I know that our principals, because I see a few, have done a very intentional job of engaging parents and just ensuring that as we continue to engage more parents in our school environments and through our surveys, so we can understand the customer satisfaction rating in a sense. This is what this is within the district. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if we can go back up to item 5A. As a reminder, we're going to kind of go through these. There were attachments. If any board members have a question or community members, part of why I am reminding about the hour and the process is because there are important presentations in our operations meeting as well. So item 5A is a renewal of One Goal Leadership Network Partnership for 24-25. The information has been there and presented. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Ms. Lindsay.
This is going to be a consistent question I have for a couple of items is I see that we're doing renewals, and in the past we've asked for what has the impact been, what have been the successes. And this one, I believe when I was looking at it, there is a lot more information around the leadership key outcomes according to the slide. Other slides don't have that as in depth, but it still doesn't convey what are the successes that we want to continue seeing or utilizing. What's the impact? Yes, it's done this, but what does that mean? What has that translated to?
So, and I'm going to give you a similar answer to what I've given you before with items like this. There's not necessarily a benchmark for this because we're developing the skills and practices of counselors and other administrators to facilitate goal setting with our high school students for post-secondary. And so right now, I believe this is our second year using this. So we're still in the midst of providing the training and the support for both counselors and administrators in this area. I can ask Ms. Null to come up and she can speak to it a little bit more. We're not going to see a definitive impact on student outcomes. We're more looking at behaviors and practices and skills of the adults in order to impact something much longer term. I can see if, and maybe Ms. Amanda Null can answer some of those questions for you about data, specific points that we may see incremental growth on.
Yeah, so I forget. So this is definitely focused more on that, like training the counselors and the administratives. So we do have from our individual sessions data from them that they have filled out to decide, right, like what do we need to get better on, what more training do we need, because this year specifically was a real focus on building them up. We have talked as a counseling larger team about now that we have some of this training, like how will that impact student data? So we are already in discussions with that, right? Like a big one that we always think of is our financial aid. What does that look like? What are the response rates for it? What is our application rates? Things like that. So we are.
Sorry to interrupt, but
on
this
that
year was a
track.
hot mess, and not because of us, but with FAFSA overall. But yeah.
Very aware.
Yeah, so that's not any
Nightmares.
Yeah. So and that's more what I'm curious on, right? Because if we have streamlined processes, if we have a team that's up to speed and they can have better targeted conversations, that's the impact. That's the result that we want to see. So what I'm hearing from you is that we're still a little shy in the process to really see that impact because we're honing the skills with the program.
Correct.
Okay.
This year we really focused on building up some of the skill sets to be able to really have good discussions and advise students and families really well on financial aid and application processes and things like that. So next year, the hope is to transfer into data.
Okay, so and from your department standpoint, you're seeing that you are seeing those being stabilized within the staff, and that's leading you to believe that next year is going to be.
Yes, so I've gotten feedback from them about what they need more of or in
Yeah.
addition to helping students through those processes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yeah. And I just think it's important to note that it's emerging. This is an area of emerging skill and development because the focus primarily before had been more on placing students in classes rather than focusing on what one goal would yes, and so I think that's really important to note. I think the feedback has been phenomenal in terms of hard data. I would say next year we may have some, but I don't want to paint a picture where it's going to have a direct impact because I think that would be misleading. I think again, just to reiterate, this is focusing on developing the skills and practices of counselors and administrators in this area, and I think there are a number of areas where we could ascertain some data that would talk about the quality and level. We could use FAFSA data, but right now this is really a focus on developing skills and practices.
And I just want to confirm, or affirm rather, that that's fine that that's where we are in the process because some things will take time and you need to keep investing in it for you to see those skills come further down the road. It's not just like with our reading program coming up. We're going to implement it. this coming year. It's not going to be perfect this coming year, but because we know that that's the trajectory, we just want to know where in that timeline we are. Like, if we're still developing, okay, we'll keep running with it. Hopefully the board agrees. I'm sure they will. But it's just being aware of where are we at in the pipeline of getting the maximum effect of these types of things. So I appreciate the confirmation of that.
So last piece to that is that we can provide data on the user end by providing survey data. And on that end, with the reading program, we can talk about implementation and what's working, what's not, as well as assessment data to support that. This is a little bit more difficult to quantify. I just want to make that the difference that not everything has a benchmark because of what you're trying to do. So, thank you.
All right. Item 5B, purchase of iReady for literacy and math intervention for grades 6 through 8. Any questions? Item C, renewal of Jocelyn Center partnership for social emotional supports. My only question for this one is more so as a takeaway around we continue to talk about mental health first aid certifications and for staff, and we had a goal of 100% certification, and I believe Jocelyn was helping us with those trainings, and so I would like to see where are we to date with that process.
Sure. And so they could not do 100% in 1 year, and that was one of the issues is that they did not have the staff to do it in 1 year. So it's an ongoing process, but I'll let Mr. Kimsick speak to that.
And if we knew that ahead of time, that would be helpful.
So we have a 3-year contract with Jocelyn Center for mental health first aid toolkit. So that was the trajectory that we wanted, year 1, year 2, and year 3. So that contract was approved last year, I think in the spring. So we did year 1, and because it's a 6.5-hour training, the only time that we have everyone for 6.5 hours is on a district institute day. So this year we did the 5 middle schools in April, and then we did 5 elementary schools in December. The plan for next year is to do the high schools and every other elementary school. So,
that's just information I'd like to see is the total number of teachers, right? The percentage of staff that has been certified to date.
Can you please put a report together so we can send it to the board?
Of course.
Thank you.
Mr. Edwards?
I want to know about this contract with the Jocelyn Center because I know the last time we talked about it, right? I know they are in this community. They downtown Waukegan, okay? They've been there. I do know they get government funding to serve this community. And so now you guys have created this wraparound center, essentially offering some of the same services that the Jocelyn Center have. But we pay them to do a summer camp. Like, what is they doing with us, y'all? Is they just here to get money from us because they know this district has money? Because I don't see them nowhere else in the community other than coming to these school districts. I'm trying to understand what is our real goal with the Jocelyn Center?
So we're not, just a point of clarification, we're not paying for their summer programming. They are holding summer programming with some of our students, but we're not doing that. And in terms of the goal, we did have AHS here to provide supplemental social, emotional supports, counseling, and they stepped away from the district, and so we replaced them with Jocelyn because they were local. It was easier for management for a number of different reasons. So I believe this is the second year of that. This is year one of this contract. So AHS ended last June. Yeah. So that's where we're at with Jocelyn, and so they were also helping us with our mental health toolkits as well.
Okay, so thank you. So now I want to look at you, Superintendent. I'm going to ask you to do this for me. One of the biggest issues with this district is, y'all, we're not investing in our employees. We may have a lot of employees that can do exactly what we paying the Jocelyn Center to do. And all this money that we're giving to them, Maybe we should invest that in some of our employees so that give them the reason to stay. And then we ain't got to do all of that contracting, because I'm just trying to figure it out. They in the district, we're paying them. They already smack downtown Waukegan, which means some of the other entities that do outsourcing is already sending some of our same kids to them. So they getting paid through the government for their kid and also through the district. And I don't need nobody to tell me anything different, because I'm out in the community, so I know that, because I know Jocelyn Center. So I'm just saying, let's look at that, and let's really consider that. Let's start investing in some of the counselors that we got and get them the proper training that they need, and we can stop doing all these conferences, and we can do that, and they can get better, and then we'll give others reason to come here. Thank you.
Mr. Edwards, I just want to point out, there's a great need for mental health, right? Support with mental health and social emotional health. This is one avenue. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's a both and, right? So I think what you're saying has credence, but I think it's a both and. And I do know at the time when we were looking for an organization to work with us, one of the things that we heard from the community is we'd like to work with somebody that is closer to Waukegan, right? So the team looked out for providers that worked with our community or were close in our community. So that was one of the selling points. And the second one was coming out of COVID. There was such a great need throughout the nation. And so everybody was pulling at different agencies for social, emotional, mental health support. And they were able to have the bandwidth to support the work that we needed here in Waukegan. So just to give you just some more context to why and how we went with Jocelyn at the time that the board approved the contract last year.
And just real quick, because we keep saying mental health, right? Do the Jocelyn Center do anything with trauma? Because I know I ain't the smartest tool in the box, but I do know this. We can talk about mental health all day long, but we can't even start that process until we figure out what the trauma is. We're not going to get nowhere else until we figure out what the trauma is. So do they specialize and address that? So
that's exactly what the mental health toolkit is to help identify trauma within oneself, within others, so for both adults and for the children. So the training that we have going on right now is to train our adults, our teachers and staff members, to identify trauma, again, within themselves, within other adults, and within students. And that was one of the primary reasons we went there. I want to just reiterate the one point. There are a lot of organizations, a lot of schools primarily, are looking for these kinds of support, so it's very difficult to find them, and there's a lot of need right now, and in increasing day after day, especially with our newcomers as well. So this is a much needed support in order to assist the staff members that we have already, and to assist our families and communities. Thank you.
I'm done after this with this topic. Please, y'all keep saying these newcomers, but my black kid's been in this district for how long, and we haven't made this a priority. So don't use that as a way to justify just bringing them in and all this excitement about the newcomers, because we should have been focused on this.
We are focusing on all. I'm just saying that we are having an increase in supports that are needed. And that was one of the primary reasons to bring in BAM and WOW and AHS and Jocelyn, a number of different supports that we have. Thank you.
So I got two questions. So we're going to go off the numbers for the estimated quota of 591,000, roughly. Last year it says they serviced 441 elementary students across 10 elementary schools. So if you do the math, that's That's $1,340 per student that we spend. That's a lot of money per student for 441, just 10 elementaries. We have a lot more buildings. My second point is the problem I have with these outside agencies and not hiring and bringing in our own and raising the pay to try to keep our own staff is the turnover of these agencies. And I'm going to use my kid as a prime example. when we had AHS in here, he went through 3 counselors in the same year. So what trauma did they help that kid with? They created more trauma. Because every time you switched over to a new counselor, that boy had to start it all over. No note writing shared in between any of them. So once you keep switching these counselors and we're having turnovers of different counselors, it's a problem. 3 of them in this district that he's seen. That's a problem. And that's the stuff we need to be looking at when we're giving out contracts like this. Is the commitment, because you're not helping a student if those counselors leave. And then you bring in a new counselor. Then it's starting over. And I found him a counselor outside the school district that I pay myself. And I drive him, and she's out of Crystal Lake. And he does it twice a month, once online, and I drive him there once a month, every month, to get the services that he needs from all the stuff between COVID and everything that happened through the divorce and everything else. And it's pitiful that we can't even get in our own district or the services here because we have such a high turnover, because we can't keep nobody, even contracted people.
I sympathize, but I keep saying that we can't talk about these issues in isolation. Is the crisis that we have and the burden and the strain on the mental health community is enormous. And so to your point, and even to Mr. Edwards, who made a good point, we have a wraparound center. We do. We have 2 agencies in there. There's Youth and Family Counseling. There's Jocelyn Center. There are tons of resources. And even with all of those resources, there is still a significant need. And so what we want to do is to make sure that we're going through the right door, because there's a reason that you have to drive to Crystal Lake. There's a reason why there aren't closer places or the waiting list is 6 months. And if we're not also discussing the reason, then we're only dealing with the outcome. So I sympathize, and your point is 100% valid. We want stability, but I will say is firsthand, as you've experienced firsthand, is that's very hard to do. And it's not just AHS, it's not just Jocelyn Center, it's not just any other financial service, any other mental health provider. Is something that we are seeing. So we do want to be, one of the questions that we consistently ask, and we've done it with Bam and Wow, or Dr. Cesario, is just to keep up to date on what their numbers are, because we are paying this because it allows them to expand, right? That's why we are covering the cost. But if we're 6 SEL consultants, right, and they only have 3, I would want the board to be apprised of how they're hiring and filling these positions.
Sure. And yeah.
Ms. Lindsay.
I was going to make a comment, and you touched on it, Board President. I think the main piece is everyone acknowledges that our students as well as our community need mental health supports, and consistency is a huge part to that. What I think we're looking for, at least what I'm looking for at the board level, is what sort of monitoring do we have in place to make sure this continues to be beneficial is not the right word, but a productive relationship with the organization to make sure our needs are met. And so I'm not seeing what that monitoring looks like. I'm just seeing numbers. We met with this many kids. But I can meet with a student for 20 minutes and not get to the root of the issue or get into meaningful dialogue. So it's that monitoring piece of how's it going, what are the checks and balances, and what's the best way to move forward given where we are at currently.
Yeah, and I think tracking that, and so we have awareness, and that was one of the reasons why we purchased Branching Minds, was to track the students and what support services they have. I think the move to Jocelyn was so that we could have more consistency, and so these folks were local. AHS, the concessions that they made were that at the request of the community and the board, that these folks come local, that we hire in Waukegan first, which made it very difficult to have those consistently staffed. So they made the concessions, we moved forward. Yes, and I also sympathize. I'm sorry that happened, because consistency is really important. But in addition to that, we also did have, during that time, mental health professionals were being pulled away for closer to home, work from home. They were doing the counseling online, so it made it really difficult for those folks to come out. We will continue to monitor in terms of the numbers, and I will work with Mr. Kimzik and with Jocelyn to see what we can get in terms of getting a little bit more granular without really defining or identifying who students may be. And that's the nuanced piece of this too. You can only go so far without identifiable information being, exposed. So, Mr. Riddle.
Yeah. When I look at the contract here, it does show reporting. It's in the contract. It says that they will report, for instance, Jocelyn will report bi-monthly updates on the status of deliverables. That will include students on the caseload, topics, skills being addressed, intervention schedules, referrals that they made to their own Jocelyn services, also the number of hours provided, the number of students on their consultant caseload, the number of crises that were supported, the progress on the student's symptoms, utilizing the Columbia impairment schedule. It goes on and on. Quarterly updates based on weekly data. I think we have to hold them to this. It's right in the contract.
And we do share these. We do share the reports with you. Dr. Nault has been sharing these regularly with you.
Right. So it
in
looks
terms
like
of the
what
consistency,
she was asking for is here. It looks like it's in the contract.
I apologize, Mr. Riddle. It's in the contract, and Dr. Nault was sending them to us. But for the larger community to feel comfortable that we are spending nearly $600,000
Right.
on this resource,
A lot.
they're not privy to the same level of information we are. And in some cases, to your point, with that personal identifiable information, that's not appropriate. But in terms of like broad strokes, if I ask people who come to these meetings regularly, how is Jocelyn Center doing in the district, they can't answer that. And I think they need that bigger picture so that they feel more comfortable that this still is a good move for the district to go toward. That's my point.
Right.
we can make that part of our BOY, MOY, EOY conversations or whatever the board would like. But we do, and Dr. Nault has presented on that information, but we can make it more transparent or regular, whatever the board decides.
I'm going to ask that you hold on that. The board will be having a workshop in July where we will be baking out on
Sure.
what the expectation is for the presentations, etc. So let's just put a stick pin in that. I mean, keep your ideas going till we get direction from the board as a whole at the workshop where we'll be hashing out like what this looks like for them, and we can have a consensus and we know what to provide.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you. We are item D, renewal panorama educational SEL screener. E, renewal of M-class intervention for grades K through 5. F, approval of Sunbelt staffing contract.
I have a
Can,
comment on that.
can I ask a question on that
We
Sunbelt
got
staffing?
2, so I'm gonna go Ms. Lindsay and then Mr. Riddle.
Okay.
Ms. Lindsay and then Mr. Riddle.
So F and P are both staffing for medical supports for our medically fragile students. And we had a previous presentation from Mr. Figueroa that we can hire internationally for nursing and other supports. So I'm just going to put that plug in again to see if we can try to move away from contracts and get more district employees. But can you help us understand why we have 2 items to approve for what I'm seeing to be the same thing?
Yes, thank you. So the one Sunbelt, actually, we have used them when we had a child come in the middle of the year from earlier intervention to preschool, and we couldn't get that child in without medical support. So there are times when we have this happen where the needs are great right away. We don't necessarily know they're coming, especially from early intervention to preschool, or age 3 to 5, or if they move in. Especially after COVID, we did have trouble providing nurses for, of any, LPN, RN, especially certified school nurses for students that were medically fragile. And we did have students that were not able to attend school, which is very problematic. We do homebound where we can, et cetera, and try to support them. So that's why we have that one. Care staff would also be, just like we previously did, we want to make sure we have the procurement process in place, so we don't need to circumvent any procurement process and have an emergency hire because we can't find a nurse. And so it's budgeted through projections, but these are blankets. I explained this previously, Lisa, the previous presentation. So these are really just to ensure when these staff come up, or if we're short, or if we can reach out to these primarily nursing companies. They do have other medical fields, but these nursing companies to help address the needs of these medically fragile children, because they just can't go to school for, it could be many different reasons.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
And I'm okay, and I don't know if Mr. Figueroa is here, and if he finds them, he'll communicate with us, and we'll work with Ms. Dobbs. And I think it would be great if we could get in-house. Really, after COVID, we all know nursing everywhere, as everything, was short, and it was really difficult. It's been much better lately. But Sunbelt is one that we do need, because we do need to pay those bills. And I want to be transparent. I want to make sure that we honor the procurement process and that we're ready. But again, we prefer to hire our own.
So, thank you, Dr. Bublitz. That doesn't quite answer my question. My question is, why do we have two? So my international was just a comment because that's something we've talked about and something I'm just going to put in as a reminder. And I understand we're not doing that quite yet with our international hiring, but why do we need both Sunbelt and care staff?
Because we never know who's going to have the nursing staff. There's a shortage. They're very hard to come by, just like social workers, OTPT, speech pass. So if they come to us in December and they have somebody and we have a need, we're ready to go. Or if we have a student move in from Zion or Rockford with these medical needs, we can reach out to 2 or 4, or we also have Maxim and some others that we can reach out to see if they have a nurse. And sometimes they do, but often they will not. So we just want to make sure that we can provide services to these children. So they don't necessarily come with somebody signed for us. It's just the contract that's ready to go. So when there is a need, or they do have somebody in hand that is ready to work and come to Waukegan, that they are available.
Okay, I think this is just
Correct.
going to be a general statement and not directed to any. It's going to be a general statement. For me personally, I find it frustrating that we have to account for other agencies not being able to fully staff or hire. Or are you saying it's different specialties that we may be looking for?
They may have different specialties,
Okay.
but in these two cases, they're primarily nursing. They may have other specialties. And go ahead. Do you want? Yeah.
So they may, the nurses may have specialties themselves to serve certain types of students. The other piece here is that it's an insurance policy. We're not expending any money unless we need to get them. So if Mr. Figueroa is able to get those folks there, this is a safety net. So that, remember, if a student comes with a certain need, we have to support that need. That IEP is stated there. We are we can't exclude them. And in this case, if we did not have these contracts, they would not. Some of these students would not be able to be served in schools. So that's what it's there for. But I'll let you speak more to this. But we're not expending any money unless we get somebody. And Mr. Figueroa, I know, has found some nurses, but I don't know how many, and I don't know if they have the qualifications to serve this particular group of students.
Okay, and Dr. Cesario, I think that's an excellent point you made, and I think Dr. Bublitz was hinting at it with the procurement. So just to confirm, right, we're not expending any costs. It could be zero if we don't need to utilize them.
That's why I wanted to emphasize
Yep.
that point. It's a blanket. So he went through the process. You all are, well, if you do approve it, you approve it. But then we're not scrambling at the 11th hour when a student comes in. It couldn't function like that. And so some of these contracts are in place as a safety net. And again, the blanket in this instance specifically, if we're not hiring anybody, we're not expending it.
Great. Thank you for being proactive. Thank you.
Correct.
Thank you. Mr. Ellers.
I have a question. Please don't leave yet, sir. Because, and I'm going to bring it up again, you know, my nephew that's been in the district, deaf, right? And I've spoken to you guys on numerous occasions about the services that he needs. And I was told that you guys didn't have certain services and that we didn't contract certain things. And so now I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this, and you guys are contracting it as a blanket. You're not spending any money, but as a blanket in the event you need. So my question is, with this kid who's deaf, who needs help understanding and speaking, but also suffers with behavioral issues, we don't have that type of thing in this district. And so then I proposed to them, I found something in Jacksonville, Illinois that he could have went to, but then the district told me, oh, we don't contract like that. So y'all, I'm really confused because I did everything. I spoke to everybody. I went through the chain of command, and these is all of the things that y'all said to me. And then I'm sitting here at this meeting right now, and you're contracting, you're putting a blanket on something in the event you need it because you have a kid to come in the district that's been dealing with this. Well, this kid that I'm talking about is 19 years old. He's been in this district all his life, and he can't even properly speak sign language. He don't have no support. Y'all told me, oh, he has a speech therapist all the time. Many times I've went up to Washington campus with his mother, and guess what? He don't have nobody there with him. And then even speaking to the staff, and I'm going to keep on bringing this up because I really feel like my face was played in, still no support. In fact, they sent Bam over to his home to talk to a kid that was deaf, and nobody told Bam that he was deaf. So, Dr. B, I'm just hoping somebody can explain something to me.
So I appreciate your advocacy. This is not the place to speak about a specific student. There's been a lot of personal identifiable.
The reason why I spoke about it, I didn't use no name. You guys say no name, so I said a student. And this student that I'm talking about belongs to me.
You can speak. You can speak about him as much as you want, but legally, we cannot. We cannot. I'm just.
Why couldn't we get services for kids like this? When I was told by you, sir, y'all all told me when I presented this to y'all. This is what y'all told me. I had several conversations with y'all, right?
I'm not going to comment on a student or any services.
Can I help?
I'm just letting you know that there's been.
So, Mr. Edwards, if you'd like to have this conversation, we can set up. Okay.
When I spoke to y'all, we're not talking about a name. I'm asking a simple question.
There's identifiable information, and we can't legally have this conversation. However, if you'd like to have a meeting, I will set up a meeting with my staff, and also have to see what the parental guardianship says, who we can speak with. We just can't speak with everyone, and I'm not saying you're not on it. More, you may than likely are, but until we're able to identify that, we cannot have any further conversation on this. So I apologize for that. It's just liability and illegality for the district.
Mr. Riddle.
My question was answered. I just wondered why the 80,000 was estimated on both of these contracts, and I see that's just a placeholder. You answered the question, Dr. Bullets. And Dr. Bullets and Dr. Josario, you answered the question.
Sure,
So it's
no
just
problem.
a placeholder. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Item G is the C&J food truck vendor for 24-25 back to school resource fair.
I'm loud enough.
No, we gotta hear it for the people that's online.
I don't know who has the mic. Here you go.
Well, I had asked about this, and I spoke to Tasia Fields about it, and I just really want to make a comment because she told me that this is being paid for, right? That the district is not paying for it. But again, I say this because, as y'all say, when we did the Juneteenth event, that the district partnered. And so I'm looking at this, and so we got somebody that's going to support this, and I think it's $20-some thousand. And so when we did the Juneteenth event, we fed over 2,000 people, and we ain't used nothing but about $4,000-$5,000. So when we get these type of vendors, I'm just putting it out there, I think we can find something better to do with $20,000 than give it to a food truck that ain't gonna spend no $20,000 worth of food. So going forward, y'all, when we looking at and we get these type of sponsorships, let's make sure we really use the money. Because hot dogs don't cost $20,000, y'all.
Thank you for that comment. Just to clarify, yes, we do make it a point to secure sponsorships to help with all of our food vendors for the Back to School Resource Fair. As many of you know, it's a very large event, and we want to make sure we're able to support and feed many families that come out. And so we do try to secure sponsorships, and he is correct. Last year we did have a local company sponsor this particular truck, and so this year we're looking to do the same.
Dr. Fields, can you please plug the event again?
I absolutely can. I have a flyer right here. Our Back to School Resource Fair is going to be July 27th. We're really excited to have it at Brookside campus this year. We have a lot of new partnerships, a lot of big things happening, so we hope to see you all there. There's still time to sign up, to volunteer, and support our big event. So we're really looking forward to it.
And Dr. Fields, where can they go to volunteer to? Sign up to volunteer.
Yes, that information is on our website, or you can email us at face@wps60.org.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last thing. Go ahead. I spoke about this last year. So now this year it's at Brookside. So I think about those kids that live on Genesee. I think about those kids that live on Martin Luther King. I think about those kids that's in 200 Julian Street. And we know most gated communities experience transportation issues. So how is my babies gonna get all the way to Brookside? Have we thought about providing buses to go to certain areas so that these kids can get on, and we bring them there and then we get them back to locations? Because this is the same thing that happened last year. We had a lot of kids miss this event for two reasons. One, I don't see flyers everywhere. And two, no transportation for them. So I'm just saying, you know, I'm not bashing anything. I'm just saying, can we consider that? Just for your knowledge, you have Township, who has vans, you have Foss Park, who have vans, and they often help with support with things like this. But I'm speaking for my babies. They need transportation to get to these events. Now, if you get that transportation, honey, I will volunteer.
I'm sure we can
Get
work
ready to
something.
volunteer.
But with the communication, they got to come with parents, right? So that's the one. So I'm
Yes.
saying, and we can work together on that. That's
So
an easy one.
every parent got to come. So
Well, not.
the reason why I'm asking is because we also have to remember a lot of parents work, right? And so if they are working, how do we go about still getting that kid there? Because again, I do events for kids. Whether a parent come or not, I'm not turning the kid away. So in this instance, I want us to be very clear when we do this and put this information out there. In the event that a parent can't come, how do we still get this kid involved?
Well, we are requiring, families to come to the events together. There are resources there not only for the students, but for the parents as well. Now, if they just can't make it, we ensure that backpacks and things like that are sent to the school so the student can get it when school starts.
So that means the kid cannot come without a parent.
Or a guardian.
It just needs to be a guardian. So if it's an aunt, an uncle,
Maybe an older
like if
sibling.
I may take my son's friends with me, you know what I'm saying? They need an adult with them.
So
Mr.
I
Edwards.
couldn't get 40 kids and 3 volunteers and bring them.
Because part of the process is to ensure that they're registered for school. It's an event that's done with intentionality, right? So when you show up, they check to make sure that you're registered at the booth. So they need a parent there. So if the parent is missing a utility bill, if they don't have the information that they need, it prevents them not being able to start. So I get your point, and we can do smaller, targeted local events, but the back to school drive is done for multiple things. It's getting them haircuts, it's getting them book bags, it's getting the parents, not just the students, access to resources. And I forget what the number was, but it's a large percentage of our students who participate in this event. If a student can't come, right, there's still book bags that are kept in reserve so that when school starts, we make sure that the kids have the supplies that they need. But yes, I mean, I'm not gonna lie about it. Is the point is, so if you bring 40 kids, do you have all of the information that you need to be able to check those kids in and register them?
Can I say something, Brandon?
I mean, I can if this is what you guys telling me now, and this is what I talk about communication. Everybody on this board have seen me do events in this community for kids, and I do them by myself. And I bring in about 500 kids. So why wouldn't somebody that's putting this on reach out to somebody like me and say, hey, Ray, we got this back to school giveaway going on, and this is what we need from the community. Then I can take that information and go to these gated communities, something that y'all don't do, and communicate with these parents in a reasonable amount of time so that they can make preparations to make this happen. That's all I'm saying.
I'm going to comment on this one only because this was brought up earlier in the year, months ago, and I even specifically said call out, let's get the date in, let's repeat it, that sort of thing. To your point, what wasn't included was the specifics around the registration, so I can completely understand that. I don't know what the solution to that component is, but with this event specifically, I personally feel that this has been communicated early enough for some connection to be made. Now, whether they're reaching out or people are reaching in, I think it's a two-way street. But I think that can be a discussion of how we can facilitate those conversations so that they are smoothly aligned, so that other individuals can also help with their specific area and the children that they're connected with.
Yeah, and absolutely, we don't want this to be a barrier, especially transportation. So in the registration process, families can definitely indicate there's space if there's special circumstances or special needs that they require. We can definitely work to provide some support in that area. And I'm more than willing to sit down with you and we can talk about those families and some of their needs and how we can support them and ensure that they're getting access to the resources at the resource fair.
Mr. McBride.
Well, I was going to allude to what you were saying as far as working with him. I don't see where if Ray decided to know somebody in the community, can get a busload of kids, and the parents give him consent to bring their babies, I don't think that we should be able to tell him no, he can't do that. And I think that's what he just said, if he wanted to bring some kids himself. And I'm sure that I would say to Ray, there are permission slips, just in case something happened that the parents say, yeah, give you permission to bring your kid. I don't see where we would be able, where we have the liberty to tell you that you could not come to the event. Now, as far as the transportation, you're right. Probably if you did after township and you brought the proposal to the township, could you help get some kids over there? And there's other areas out there, communities that where buses and whatnot would be glad to help you. But my point is that I don't think that we shouldn't tell you cannot come with no kids to the event and you're able to bring them there. And I think that's what the event is for, is reaching out to the community. And if you got somebody that's partnership with us like yourself that want to bring some kids, I don't see where we should not allow you to do that. I mean, once again, I'm sure you're not going to just pick up anybody's kid and bring them nowhere without their parents and stuff knowing. And I don't think when the kids come, they're not going to Great America, where they're going to get on some rides. So they just ready to come out to the park and I don't know, jump in and do whatever else they're going to do. So anyway, I agree. I'm on your side when it comes to the idea of you trying to bring some kids out of the community, because I would probably do the same thing. Because just like you said, those kids, and he made mention the Towers, Genesee Project, Martin Luther King Drive. A lot of times they don't have the capability and the resources to do what most kids can do from some areas. So if you got somebody like him trying to reach out to them kids, trying to get them there, more power to him.
Thank you.
Sign me up for the bouncy house again.
Will do.
And my last comment is because I do want to give public kudos, is because in addition to the district event, I know specifically last year the district supported multiple book bag drives at other sites. So this is not the only opportunity, but as many kids as we can have, we need to get them there. But I know we worked with Trinity Church. I know we worked with Jesus Name and tons of other ones with the different BLM events that they put on, because we know the 27th may not be a date that works. We know the location may not be a place everybody get to. We know the time doesn't work for everybody. We understand that, which is why we try and have touch points in many different ways and different opportunities in different places with different organizations. So I do want to call out the work of the FACE department, is because I've been impressed to see from, I don't know if it was 5 years ago or 6 years ago, whenever we started, to where it is today, and the amount of growth and opportunities. And then we have some schools that I also want to shout out my our principals and school teams who have in previous years covered 100% of the school supplies for our students. So we are making very aggressive efforts in order to make sure that any kid who needs it has it. So thank you.
And I do appreciate that, Board President, and thank you, Mr. McBride, for that. I appreciate that, and I hope we can do better. But I say to Ms. Fields, Dr. Fields, this was the same thing last year, dear. Told you to reach out to me. Nobody never did until the last minute. And this is what I'm saying. We can do better. And I feel like a lot of the times when I ask this district to work with me, or I reach out to this district with something, it's always pushback because I come here and speak out. And that's not fair, y'all, because I'm going to continue to speak out, but if I'm doing something for these babies and this community, y'all should be able to help. As the board president just said, y'all work with so many different individuals, right? And so many entities. And I'm going to pop my collar right now real quick, because it ain't too many entities out here that done brought more kids out than Ray himself. That's all I'm saying.
Again, before we leave here, we can set up some time to go ahead and get that collaboration going. Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, we got item H, and then I am at 7:35. Want to be cognizant of the time. Renewal of Equity Education Partners EEP contract for 24-25. I renewal of my telephone system support agreement. J, request to renew Elevate K through 12. I feel like we talk about Elevate every board meeting, and so I'm starting to get confused as to just personally
What
does what, because I know we just discussed Elevate at the previous student achievement. I see the attachment. I support it as a renewal, but are we using them in multiple different ways?
Well, middle school and high school, and oftentimes in the high school it is for difficult to staff roles.
Okay.
And then we've also in the middle school it's been for social studies, or well, not for social studies, for math or for science. I know we had a number of different positions. Do you want to add something? Okay.
No, that's fine.
So that it's the staff. It's the staff. A teacher. We do have to have an individual in the room, to either a para or a teacher to monitor, but this is just to shore up, and I know that Mr. Figueroa has brought in.
No, I'm good. I understand
All right.
what Elevate is. It just continues. Like, wasn't it on? We talked about it. So to me, it's like coming back again, and I guess I don't know if we already talked about it as a renewal.
I don't think we talked about it as a renewal. I think we talked about it in a different vein, but
That's what I'm asking. Is
yeah,
because
I don't remember. It comes up quite a bit. I'm sorry, I can't remember what it was or why.
Go ahead,
Okay,
Mr. Riddle.
Dr. Cesario, my only question is that, it says on the documentation 88,000 to, 511,000 as needed. My question is this, though, and we've talked about this before. Have we surveyed students and teachers or department chairs who monitor the classes? Because we've heard pushback that some of these classes students aren't happy with. So I don't know what have we surveyed, I guess, and have we asked the department chairs who monitor these things whether this is effective? Are our students that take these virtual classes learning something?
Well, we've gotten feedback and we've gotten feedback from parents, and actually had a really good conversation with Mr. Sobecki. He does not like it. He's going to let you know. No. So, and actually that's a really good point, so I'll bring it up. If people at home didn't hear what Mr. Sobecki said, he doesn't want his child in another class. And that's one of the things we're looking at. If you had a student that had an Elevate teacher this year, we don't want that to be repeated again. The other thing that we did is we brought in parents so they could have an orientation of what is Elevate, how do you communicate with the teacher, what is the curricula, and to answer any other questions that parents may have. So we're going to do that again at the beginning of this year. We'll do it at the middle of the year again as well at the change of the semester. But the feed, it's I don't have anything quantitative to present to you. But yes, there are instances where people were not pleased with the teacher, and then we'd shift them out. And Elevate has been very flexible with that. The 88 to 500 gives us a range. If we don't use it, then we're not paying for it. And we're really hoping not to use it this year. But we don't want to be caught, again, at the 11th hour without having somebody in place.
Do we have like a department chair for each one of them, whether it's math or whether it's language or whatever, that does sort of monitor this, so that they can see periodically, are the students in a particular class successful in what they've taken because of this use of this program?
So I was going to ask Ms. Patty to come up. They regularly review it. I don't have specifics as to who that is that reviews that data that comes out of there. Okay. But I can get that information to you and to the rest of the board.
Just so that if I think it can be a good program. I would think, for courses that children can't get, because we don't have a teacher to teach that program. So it sounds like a reasonable device for certain, courses. And like you said, these are hard to place, hard to find teachers.
In some instances, and in some instances, it's due to shortages and unexpected yes. And so it does help, but there's a teacher shortage across the country. Again, I think hopefully with our new contract and with the work that Mr. Figueroa has been doing, as well as our other departments in terms of recruiting, we are going to shore up some of those vacancies, and that's what we hope to do.
Good. Thank you.
I'll try to keep it quick. With these, it's for hard to fill positions, right? So when we're looking at the courses themselves, what level of difficulty are we looking at? Are we looking at lower math classes like pre-algebra? Are we looking at higher end math classes like calculus?
Mm-hmm.
Where in the spectrum do a majority of these Elevate instructors come into?
Sure, great question. So I just want to reiterate again, it is in the instance that we have a vacancy.
Yeah.
That's one, and then in a hard to staff position. So like an example of that might be Spanish physics, or something like calculus, or where and so that those are some examples where it was hard to find folks that could fill that, and so we would look to Elevate to fill those.
Okay. And then my curiosity just goes into classroom management within those classes. What does that look like? From what I'm understanding, based on the conversations, there is an adult present in the room to support with components, but I'm just curious as to the big picture. What does classroom management look like? Is it usually, in these situations, is it usually under control? Does it vary depending? What's our gauge on it is my question, I guess.
I don't have definitive data on that, but just if we were to say overall, we have to have an adult in the room to manage that. Yeah. And I would say it would be dependent on their skills and their management style. I think the preference is not to have Elevate, but we need to have them as a resource in the event that we cannot have an instructor present in the room.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And to your point, I hope that contract gets people applying online so we can have in-person teachers. But at the department head level, I'm just curious if classroom management is in the conversation. But that can come as you said.
And we can get that information to the board, yes.
All right. K, attendance at the Innovative Schools Conference, at-risk students wired differently, trauma-informed schools.
I want to ask about it.
Go ahead, Mr.
So this conference right here, who's going on this? Is it teachers?
There's one teacher, Janine Lightfoot.
So I want to ask, why aren't we looking at like climate control specialists to be a part of stuff like this? That would be very important, being that they have the kids, and you know what I'm saying, when there's issues, they the ones the kids go to because they are essentially like the deans, right?
Yeah. I believe Mr. Dupuy had taken a lot of his team out to one that was approved by the board recently. Sorry to call you out, Mr. Dupuy, but I just remember a couple of months ago, we had something where they attended something similar, correct?
That is correct. Go ahead, Oscar.
Yeah. A couple months back, we did take some, and we're strategically taking all climate and culture specialists to workshops and conferences around providing what does it look like to address students in a meaningful manner and address discipline in a meaningful manner where there's restorative practices taking place with them. And so we're about to go ahead and do another round next upcoming school year around that. So right now, that's where we're at. Along with alternatives to suspensions too.
Thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think Oscar answered.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, item L, purchase ESL curriculum for 6th through 8th grade.
It's me again. Superintendent, I'm speaking to you because I've spoken to you again, and I'm going to say this publicly, and I'm going to be loud with it. I keep seeing ESL. That is English speaking language. I want to see SSL. Y'all want black and brown to communicate, to work together. A lot of them is coming here, and they get to learn our language, but my kids can't understand them or even communicate with them. So I keep asking this district, let's look at that. Why, I want to be able to talk to my Latino brothers and sisters.
Phenomenal. And the only reason, Mr. Edwards, is because I want to get through the presentation. But your point is noted, and one of the ways when you meet with Ms. Fields is to talk about how to get our African American enrollment up in our dual language program.
Okay, and I appreciate that, but I don't want to just see it for pre-K.
It rose up, but they got to
rose
start
up.
in preschool. So I took Spanish, and I graduated after 4 years of Spanish, and I'm with you. I would love to speak it. I don't know it. I would appreciate the opportunities to learn it more. We talked about opportunities to learn it for free at COC.
So that's who
But
I
we
see
can't-
too.
We can't do it all. So
But
that's
that's who
why
I
it's
see too.
connecting the resources, huh? And Mr.
And the
McIntyre.
library does it.
It would be Rod. So it's a bunch of people. So
Miss Ambrosio. Miss
Who's?
Miss Ambrosio
Oh,
is
okay.
right there.
Well, I'll get your number before I leave, honey.
all right.
All right, thanks.
So
Got me going here. We had the job, Lake County job placement. If you look at the job description, I mean, a lot of jobs require that you speak Spanish. So I think that's should be a top priority. And I agree that more languages that you speak, okay, both ways. It has to be a two-way street. And I see a lot of kids, especially African Americans, they can't even apply because they don't speak Spanish. So, there's a lot of value to what he's saying.
Thanks.
I do want to make a comment on this topic just because I have a personal experience of working with Miss Ambrosio in this regard, because my kids go to dual. I am white as they come, but I value the capacity to be able to speak Spanish because there's so many values to that, right? And so when my kids were switching over to another school, we were at first told that no, they don't get to continue that dual language at that school. But in working with Miss Ambrosio and the department, not only were we able to get that rectified and my student was able to continue their dual language, but 2 other students, one was Black, one was Latino, to also be able to gain access to that dual language because they've had that experience previously. So, and I think many board members have been proponents of making sure we expand our dual language program, two-way dual language program, so that there's more access to the wider community for it. Currently, the capacity is what it is, right, but that's something that we're looking to expand. And to Mr. Edwards' point, we need our families to also engage with that process. So I just wanted to formally thank you for that, because that was very beneficial for not just me, but for the other families involved.
Thank you. So yeah, this was just about curriculum. So,
right.
Item M, renewal of Power School, WPS60.org website and school messenger. The information is listed there. And renewal of Ombudsman Plus contract, 30 slots. The information is listed there.
Sorry,
Question on
just
that,
to...
Brandon. Oh.
Go ahead, Mr. McBride, and then I'll go to Ms. Lindsay.
Dr. Bubbles, is, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Did you get some clarity on, as opposed to the last time we spoke about the number of students that we have that wasn't filling the seats?
So, okay, so I'll just go over quickly about ombudsman. So these are students that often get overlooked. They don't have aggressive behaviors. They don't act out in the same way that some students with more behavioral or attention or other sensory needs do. So these are students for O+ that have a tendency to be truant, or they're at school but they're not in class. They're often failing, or they are at risk for dropping out, or they will never get enough credits. And so it's really an extension. It's of the Waukegan High School services for students with IEPs, much like AOEC, but it's geared for students with IEPs to get credits. Now they can take more than one class at a time, or if they can only have the focus on one class, they can just do that. We have graduated, looks like 11 the last few years. One of the reasons it's dropping is we have older kids with fewer credits, so they have more that they need to do. Specifically, Mr. McBride, with these students, they're a little different than our best students where we might have because of behaviors. These are students we're doing whatever we can, whatever we can to keep them in school and work towards graduation. So if there's more specifics, please let me know on this particular
His
school.
question, Dr. B, is around, right, we're budgeting for 30 slots.
Yes.
Did we use 30 slots last year?
So we're on the rise. We used 19 this year. It tends to be fluid because these students are often truant or do not go to school. We do have a goal to fill all of them. We want to start targeting kids at the younger age. So we have a lot of Washington campus kids right now. We want to target some of the Brookside ones for the, I can't remember, the on track, graduation on track. We want to target those that are already off there earlier and try to fill those 30 slots. But we have not in the last 3 years, to be transparent, but we're up about 5 students this year in the previous 2 years. And we do have an option that we're exploring that we can, I don't know what the right word, rent, sell, lease out to other districts for those slots. So if Zion had a need, they could partner with us and they would pay the tuition for that. That's something we are just exploring. I didn't know we could do that until this fall. But correct. And we can look, I told Ms. LeSueur, the president, I knew some of the questions that you might ask, and that those are things that I might need to ask her.
Yeah, and the main one is, so again, we're budgeting for 30, but if we only use 19, will they only charge us for 19? Or are we paying?
No, we got to pay for it.
the whole 30.
So one of the problems with this is they need to be able to pay their bills to keep the school open. So I do get that, and we can look at dropping it 20 to 25, and I can ask Sue that. But again, our goal is to make sure we have this option for students, and we do want to fill it. We want to reach more students.
Well, my point, Dr.
Yeah.
Robinson, you said it, and I think you alluded to that we were going to go back and negotiate with them. If we're not using 30 and you only losing 19, and we're paying for the other 11 that's not there. And like you said, this has been going on for 3 years. And I think somewhere along now, after the second year, it should have got addressed. That's my point. And then, like you're saying, even if you decide to do what you were saying earlier, and that was go out to other districts and have them slots filled and have them pay for it. I just don't. My point is, I just don't want to see us paying for paying for slots that we're not using.
I totally understand that, and I was upfront with Ms. LeSueur about that, and I did expect those questions. So I can go back to her, or we can look at, I believe with Mr. Dupuy, we looked at, can we monitor it each year, how many, perhaps do an MOU for more slots if we need after the first year. Those are some options that we would have, yes.
And I wouldn't address this if I didn't go into the buildings myself on Sunset and look and see how well it's being occupied. And I still say that even you say 19, I still think you're still undermining the 19 from what I can see. And I don't, and I stay right around the corner, and I go quite often through that area, and I look in there, and I just think that we could do better. Let me just put it like that.
Yes, and yes, you're correct. Like I said, that's how many students went this year. They're not always there in attendance. The nature of these students, they aren't always going to school, and that's one of the concerns, that we're trying to give them an opportunity to get credits towards graduation. So I do hear you, and I do get that, and it is part of the nature of this population. I should add, it is about half the price of tuition that a typical therapeutic day school would be without learning those. We've talked a lot about, you go to those schools and you learn some new behaviors, right? These kids, these aren't those kids, so this is a safer place for them. And you don't have to. Ms. Davis is here, her son went there, and because it's public, you have the opportunity, but you don't have to. She wasn't sure she wanted to take the mic, but do you want to speak to how they helped your son, Latrell? Okay, is that all right? Sure. Oh, I'm not forcing her. We talked about it before.
Okay, that makes me more comfortable that it was previously discussed and not like
No,
all of a sudden.
Ms. Taya called her today, and she graciously wanted to come and talk about her, Latrell's success.
Actually, I had two students that two of my children went to Buzzman. My one daughter was general ed, and when she started back to school after COVID, she actually had a meltdown in school, and I'm very involved in their IEPs and their conditions and what's going on with them. And safety, security knows me, staffing knows me because I'm constantly at the school. And she just pressured. She couldn't stand to be around a lot of children. And once she got to a Buzzman, these are on both of them in their senior years, she just excelled. I mean, to sit there at the front of the computers and just do what she had to do. Because she said, Mom, I'm bored. I just need to do what I need to do. I just need to get out of school. I don't want to be around a lot of people. So now she's at Western in Macomb, Illinois for nutrition and dietitian. So, and now my son, I had trouble with him. He did not want to go to school. This kid was 2 credits short from graduation. They sent me to Youth Build. He didn't fit the program. He was not behavioral, so like bad. He just didn't want to go to school, and I couldn't understand why. He was going to Brookside. He was involved in sports, very active, very popular. He got to Washington campus, and all of a sudden, he played football that sophomore year, no, not sophomore, his junior year. And then all of a sudden he just didn't want to play sports anymore, didn't want to go to school, and I couldn't understand why. And I kept pressuring him and talking to the counselors. They actually keep my kid out of school. I went on vacation, came back, he said, Mom, they told me not to come back. I got involved because he's IEP for reading. And I was like, how do you kick my kid out of school and not let me know anything about it? So parents, know your rights. And I stayed on the school, and they sent me, like I said, to Youth Bill. He didn't fit the program. I stayed on the counselor. I worked with Dr. Morrison, I think, or Morrison, yeah. And I worked with her. And I said, what about ombudsman? I say, my daughter graduated from ombudsman. What about ombudsman? And she was like, well, I don't know, because he has an IEP. So they do have an ombudsman program for IEP. But the only way I found out is kept pushing, kept pressuring. And I would go wherever they sent me, and he didn't fit the program. So when he got to ombudsman, he talked to Dr. B. They call him Dr. B, Dr. Bushio? Yeah. And the kids call him Dr. B. He said, just call me Dr. B. And he worked with him. He said, Vicki, he's just afraid. He's afraid to graduate. 2 credits short. And they got him reading in the program and online and doing his work and working with him and reading. And he graduated on time. He said, Mom, I always thought, they heard me a little bit. He said, I always thought I would graduate, Mom, but I didn't think I would graduate by class. And he graduated on May 17. He was so proud, and I was so proud of him. So there's programs out there, but we got to push those counselors. You got to go to the school. You got to know the principal. You got to know the staff. You got to know security, because there were times when he actually came home and didn't want to go to school because he's like, I don't want to get into fights, Mom. I don't want to get into fights. And he said, I don't even want to go to the school and get my diploma. Just go get it. I don't want to go to that school anymore. And I don't know what's the connection? What is missing where the kids do not want to go to school? Safety is one. That's a very serious. And mental health is very serious too. So work with your kids. Push them. Support them. And they'll surprise you. That's all I can say. And there are programs out there. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so thank you, Ms. Davis. And I'll talk to Ms. LeSueur about some of the concerns. She already knows. I already let her know. And we'll just continue the process. Okay.
And I think you got to. So we can't go back, right, Ms. McBride, and fix what they didn't do. But if we approve 30 for this next year, based on his parents, right, there are students who would benefit from the program. And you mentioned here at the podium, Dr. B, that your goal is not just to place kids, right, but for kids that this is a fit to get us to use the 30 slots that we have, right?
I would rather use this than a therapeutic day school where they're going to meet some new friends that are going to teach them some new skills we don't want them to.
Understood. So.
Well, yeah, and one of the takeaways I have, thank you, Ms. Davis, for speaking, is that, you had to fight to get that accommodation. It sounds like if we're going to be filling these 30 slots, parents shouldn't have to fight to get the resource that they need. So I'm excited to see how those needs are met while being fiscally responsible, to Mr. McBride's point.
We're going to try to target specific kids based on credits and such. Yeah, thank you.
And I do know this may not even be a Dr. B, and it's a throwaway. I'm sorry. It is 8 o'clock, so I want to end this meeting soon. But about, credit recovery and AOEC. So I know that right now the goal is not to place students at AOEC when they are freshmen, but sometimes if you are leaving freshman year with being very, very credit deficient, right, how early are we intervening? So that's kind of my takeaway. I know that was one of the things, and parents have to fight to get the kid placed in the AOEC. They're like, they graduated and they failed every class first semester. Mm-hmm. So summer school, and I'm going to put it out there, parents, it's not a punishment. Yeah. I think some of our kids need to go to summer school to make up some of those credits that they lose, but also you want to make sure that they have an opportunity and a fair shot to actually make it out of high school. And we know because of the freshmen on track rates that the more that they're off track, the harder it is for them to make up. So I get it. Just with this program and other programs, even AOEC that we have in district, how are we making sure that we're utilizing them? We got old learning partners for comprehensive schools. P, I know we discussed earlier, but it's the care staff partners proposed contract. Q, proposed purchase of iPads at Edith Smith. Go ahead, Mr. Sabecki.
My only question is, don't all these staff have laptops? So now they need iPads also. This says 70 iPads for the staff. For around the classrooms, for mobility is under the rationale. But I'm in these schools, and the teachers are carrying their laptops all around. So how many devices do the teachers actually need?
So I think it's both for that and for the new e-hall pass that they're trying to utilize, so that the app is on that iPad to make it more convenient.
Well, we don't spend $30,000 or whatever it is, 70 iPads just for an e-pass system, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Item R, 2024 Annual Visible Learning Conference. All right, with that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion
Thank
by
you.
Mr. McBride, second by Mr. Riddle. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. We're now adjourned. If we can meet back at 8:10 to continue with our meeting. It is 8:16. I'd like to call the operations meeting, June 18th, 2024. Waukegan Public Schools Operations Service Committee meeting for June 18th, 2024 to order. If I could have a roll call, please.
Ms. Gonzalez, Mr. Riddle,
Present.
Mr. McBride,
Present.
Ms. Hannah, Ms. Lensing,
Here.
Ms. Fabian, President Ewing.
Here. So we do, like before, have a quorum. The other board members did let me know that they would not be able to attend this evening. So with that, we have our approval of meeting minutes, approval of the meeting minutes of April 16th, 2024, OSC meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Second by Ms. Lensing. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes? All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Item 3B, approval of the meeting minutes for the May 21st, 2024 OSC meeting.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Riddle.
Second.
Second by Ms. Lensing. Any comments, questions, corrections to the minutes?
I have a question. So are we now up to date with minutes? And
These
we're
are
on schedule?
committee meetings, so typically we haven't. There's just the April one. I'm not sure if we brought it back from something not being approved.
Okay.
But yeah, item A and B, approval of the meeting minutes for the May 21st, 2024 OSC meeting. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay. Minutes are approved. Discussion items. This first item 4A, I mean, it's a software platform. I don't know if the board had questions, but I'd like to go to B. Approval of the 4% increase for non-union personnel. And then I also wanted to, we have a couple of reports down below. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Moden,
Yes,
on item 4B.
Thank you, Board President. Good evening, members of the board, staff, community, superintendent. So item 4B is the annual approval of the 4% increase for non-union personnel for the FY25 year. We have listed, as we've done in the past, the different percentage increases for the various bargaining units. We do want to remind the board that this increase was in the budget presentation from a couple weeks ago, the first budget workshop, and we are going to be asking at the next board meeting to recommend a 4% increase for non-union personnel. And also, as previously, we have listed all the impacted job classifications.
All right, Board of Education, comments, questions?
Yes, Mr. LeBaron, for all non-union personnel, is any of them happen to be missing that could be non-union? Or we pretty much touched all of them?
Mr. McBride, I just want to make clear on the question. So we have touched all the union personnel. This would be anybody not represented by a collective bargaining agreement.
Okay.
And these are the classifications we have in the system that shows the breakdown by title.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. If we scroll to the bottom on the agenda, we have a couple reports. So we have the human resources assessment information. So that was one that we held over from the previous meeting because there was no attachment. Go ahead, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you, Board President. So we have some assessment information that we want to present to you. This is related to what was originally presented in January of 2023 that we asked the board to approve a review of our HR processes. And we also have a initiatives for HR presentation right after this if the board would like to hear more details on that. But if we could get into this, Mr. White, if you could help me move forward. So just to highlight some focus areas of the assessment, we wanted to enhance organizational effectiveness. Human resources is a very important department within the district. It is ultimately the backbone in the people department of the district. So we wanted to enhance its effectiveness, align its practices with organizational goals, help identify and mitigate risk as it relates to HR functions within the district that are being implemented by a variety of stakeholders, do a procedure review and suggestions for process improvement, and highlight opportunities for improvement, and not just initial improvement, but continuous improvement with our HR processes and practices. Next slide, please.
Why aren't we following the order of the agenda? Why do we skip down to number, these reports? Because we're here for item number D, and now we have to wait to do all that bottom part and then come back.
We don't have to wait till everything at the bottom, Ms. Carrasco, but the main reason is to get through the presentations, because a lot of individuals are here for the presentations as well. So as the board chair, I do control the flow and the movement of the agenda, so it's no other reason. We can go to that item next if you have individuals and you have interest. Go ahead, Deputy Moulton.
Thank you. So some items from the process overview: one-to-one interviews from key stakeholders within the district staff. Focus groups, and the groups are listed here: district leadership, principals, assistant principals, teachers, and union leadership, specifically our union presidents. A survey from the same group of individuals that have regular ongoing interactions with the Human Resources Department, whether it be for personnel reasons, investigations, etc., as well as a personnel file and other document review that the department manages. And you'll see here listed 150 randomly selected personnel files were physically reviewed within the HR office. Next is some internal information that was reviewed: job descriptions of all current HR staff members in those positions. The organizational structure and alignment, so the positions, the work distribution, the staffing level, how that work is done on a regular daily basis. Again, the personnel files, all current collective bargaining agreements, and at the time that this was reviewed, some of those agreements were in negotiations, but they did review what was current at that time, as well as the current policies and written guidelines that the Human Resources Department has. And I think it's very unclear to point that out as it relates to written guidelines, because you'll see later on in the presentation some recommendations for process execution gaps, and sometimes it's a matter of documentation that can assist with that as we're disseminating information and doing trainings throughout the district. There's a variety on the next two slides of external information that was reviewed by the People's Company. So we have them listed here. A lot of this is Illinois State information, Department of Labor, Personnel Records Review Act, new employment laws effective January 1, 2023, which was around the time we started this, the Illinois Education Association, National Education Association. If we could go to the next slide, I'll just continue listing them here. U.S. Department of Ed, Society of Human Resources Management, American Consortium of Equity in Education, which the equity aspect was a major request and focus of their work. Recruiting and teacher shortage best practices, and we've also linked in as well. We were asking for models essentially of recruitment and retention as local as possible, not nationally, but as local as possible, to help us model what we can do. We've heard a lot about teacher recruitment and retention. I know the Human Resources Department has presented on that previously. We've also heard that from the school level as well as individuals that come to these meetings. So what they did was they, really surfed the internet to see what a good model would be that we could replicate. You'll see at the bottom of this slide, North Shore School District 112, if a recruitment model website that has been reviewed and recommended for us to model after. That's promoting the district and community, and a first-year commitment to new staff members within the district. We do not have them queued up, but they are linked in for everybody to take a look at. But it's really promoting the community. So in this case, it would be promoting the city of Waukegan, as well as a commitment on behalf of that district to first-year employees, what resources are going to be provided. The main resource would be mentorship with senior teachers, or it may be some other assistance areas if they're transitioning from out of district into their district, or out of the city into their city. But it's a very complex, comprehensive guide that is on their website that is very clear, so that anybody who's searching a job in their district will be able to see it, and they will know specifically what resources they'll be provided and when. All right, next slide, please. Oh, next slide. the next slide. Thank you. There should be one before that. Yeah. General themes, thank you. All right, so these are some of the general themes that were reported. Most commonly used processes and protocols are not documented. So I mentioned that earlier. They looked at what was written, but they did identify that there are some processes not documented. There are some processes that the district has that we follow, but we need to do a better job of documenting them. Process execution gaps from the Human Resources Department to other leadership levels. We are a decentralized district, as Mr. Figueroa has mentioned before. It is the expectation that there are certain leadership levels that are executing HR functions that are not directly in the HR office, whether that be department leadership positions, et cetera, or school-based. No process improvement mechanisms to fix misalignments and process execution, which ties to the previous bullet point. Recruitment visibility, which is the North Shore example I just mentioned. And it's more than recruitment visibility as it relates to going to job fairs. And I know that we've done a great job in the international recruiting area, but it's really diversifying our virtual visibility and recruitment is really what they're getting at here. And then revisiting the organizational structure and staffing levels within the Human Resources Department. There was an item noted that there should be, as a best practice, 150 staff members throughout the organization to one HR staff member as a ratio. And the district does not have that, so that was one of the common themes, and that is something that we would need to look into further. All right. Some key recommendations. So define the vision and measures of success for the HR department. Some items here for recruitment effort improvements. Build and implement a community communication plan. Develop district brand to attract talent. Expand the talent pool and ensure local regional candidates are targeted similar to international recruits. Next, consistency in candidate selection and evaluation processes. So that's candidate selection of new employees, evaluation processes for current staff. And again, because of the timeline of this assessment, there are certain elements that the district has incorporated since we started this process, particularly as it relates to an evaluation process for employees not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. And then lastly, assess the functionality and capability of the HRIS system, which is iVisions, to ensure the system meets the district's human resources needs. Some additional recommendations: apply customer service principles in recruiting and hiring experiences. Provide all pertinent employee details on offer letters. I believe that has been mentioned as well. Identify critical human resources processes, process steps, and work required to support the processes. Annually conduct random audit of employee personnel records. Implement quality control and continuous improvement processes, and track certain human resources metrics. We did want to take the opportunity to go into a little more detail on the human resources metrics because it's important, as we've talked in the past about exit surveys. We've talked about staff satisfaction surveys. It's important that we introduce new metrics through the strategic plan as well as new dashboards that we plan to roll out to keep our thumb on the pulse of staff satisfaction within our district. So if you could go to the next slide. So this is for progress monitoring and process improvement based on the experience and the perceptions of the staff in our district. Next slide, please. So, teacher retention. Thank you, Mr. White. Teacher retention. So these are metrics that we would be looking to possibly track through dashboards in real time, similar to other data points that we've incorporated. And these are things that we talk about on a regular basis internally. So teacher retention, staff turnover rate, time to fill vacancies. So how much time does it take from the time a vacancy is posted to the time it's filled? Employee to student ratio to ensure that we have adequate support for students. Promotion rates by demographic, and retention rates by demographic. And these are points that we can analyze once we collect this data moving forward to ensure that we are not dipping below whatever internal metric we have as a baseline that we want to maintain. Employee satisfaction surveys, absenteeism rate. You know, it's very difficult for the district to support our students and our ongoing activities if staff are absent on a regular basis. Employee engagement by demographic and percentage of engaged employees. In those engagements, you know, are what type of student activities, what type of district activities are those employees going to? And these are some preliminary metrics that were introduced to us because we want to ensure, as has been mentioned here in the past, that this is more than just a place of work where people are just showing up, doing a job and leaving. We want to make sure they're engaged holistically in what the district is doing. All right. Budget variance for HR expenses. Recruitment cost and the budget, I apologize, that's a duplicate. Budget variance for HR expenses. So ensuring that what we're budgeting for HR efforts we are actually doing and allocating appropriately. Employee resource group participation. So this would be affinity groups for certain employees who may need it to support their transitions in the district or their daily occurrences within the district. And then perceptions of inclusion. So this is where the diversity, equity, inclusion, and employee satisfaction would come into play. If individuals have a perception that they are excluded or not able to be included in certain district activities as district employees, that would be something that the district would want to know. Diversity representation, diversity in leadership roles, hiring diversity, pay equity, community engagement and partnerships, and supplier diversity. So some of these metrics and themes, I would call them, through the metrics, are things that have been presented or discussed in the past or have been requested. These were brought to us as potential metric points to measure. And again, I don't think any of these items, I'm not listing or calling out all the specific descriptions as they're in the presentation, but there's nothing too much new, at least in some of these metrics that you're hearing. But it's a matter of making it a reality, ensuring that we're monitoring it regularly. All right, professional development participation, performance appraisal completion rate, and then grievance complaint resolution time. And there's quite a few metrics, so bear with me. But I believe this is the last few. Succession planning effectiveness, ensuring that we have succession planning in place by department or by school to help support ongoing initiatives. Safety incident and training completion, as well as training and development participation, and that would be for tracking training for staff and their development programs. So by regularly monitoring this metric, we can look at workforce dynamics within the district and ensure that we're providing staff the supports they need. Again, there's quite a few metrics listed here. We would have to scaffold up to a lot of these, but some of them, for example, teacher retention rate, staff turnover rate, are things that we can certainly start to look at now and build out a strategic plan for monitoring more metrics in the future. And that leads me to the final slide of next steps. So we have a goal and target here of September 1st, 2024 to do a few things. Develop a multi-year strategic plan for human resources in its alignment with the district goals and initiatives as we're looking at Destination 2028. Revisit the organizational structure and staffing levels so that we have adequate staff within the HR department to support all the various needs, employee needs. Prioritize areas of process improvement and training. Again, we cannot tackle everything at once. We need to prioritize the more critical areas or the areas of deficiency for improvement that have the greatest impact first. And then review the department initiatives and compliance activities in alignment with other departments. In addition, the last two bullet points, review and update all HR job descriptions, which is in general a good best practice, to make sure that the job descriptions reflect the work that's currently being done, and establish and monitor competencies for the HR department leadership team. Thank you.
So Mr. Vukovic, you say it first, and then I'll come to Ms. Lindsay.
Just a question about the HR department. Several months ago, might have even been last year, you all hired a consultant from Madison, Wisconsin to look into some stuff with the HR department. I haven't missed many meetings, and I don't recall seeing any report on that. And just wondering if any of that was taken into account in this presentation, and where is that report and how much did it cost?
Yep. So a great majority of the information that it was the People's Company that was hired. A great majority of their information that's highlighted within this presentation, and I believe that contract was approved for $55,000.
So that report was received, so it is available to the public through FOIA.
So there is a preliminary draft report, but we wanted to take highlights of the report so we could start executing some of the items now.
Has it been paid for?
It has not been 100% paid for as of yet.
Thank you.
And I mean, and I'm sorry, but to be transparent and let Mr. Vukovic know, right, what things, I'm sure if you submit the FOIA, they'll have to provide a response. But obviously there's candid feedback and information in the place specific to certain employees. So again, what elements they be able to release when it's a finalized report versus what they couldn't be decided in the FOIA process. Yep. Mr. Edwards.
I have a few comments with this, and I'm going to piggyback on this. I was going to ask the same thing about their report because it is paid for by public money. But the more concerning thing to me, have the board seen the full report in its entirety without anything being retracted or marked off? Have the board seen it? I'm asking the board this. Have you guys were able to see this report?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Board President, we do have access to review the full report, and we need to make an appointment with administration to view it and go over it. I personally have not yet reviewed it, but I am looking at my personal work schedule to see when I can view the full entire report, but it is available to us.
Okay, so my concern is this. As Mr. Vukovic said, I don't miss many meetings. And since I've been coming to these meetings, I've been talking about this particular department. We've had 2 firms we've contracted to come in to look at how this department is ran. And neither one of them firms have given us a satisfactory report. In fact, we had one stand at this particular mic and tell us about the HR department. So although I appreciate the assessment and everything that we're doing, the issue that I have, many staff members in this district is not comfortable with this HR director. Many have spoken about it. I have came to you guys and told you guys personally how staff has been disciplined and placed downstairs in a room by this director. So even though you coming up with these good ideas, the ideas can be great, but do we have the right person to execute them? And is our staff comfortable with working with this individual? That's number one. And I'm not understanding why we haven't addressed this. We're constantly paying all of this money for firms to come in to tell us what our staff has already told us, what has been evident, right? So, second, we talk about the recruiting. Come on, y'all. How many times are we going to talk about that? We don't have the right person doing it. We just don't. And that's evident. But apparently we want to continue to hold on, and we wondering why we're not going nowhere. It's not that people is just overlooking our district. And I'm going to speak it, and I have to, because I was very, very instrumental in to get a black man to leave the District of North Chicago. in hopes that we would even look at him as a principal. This HR didn't even contact him at first, at all. Many applicants have put in, and this HR director looks over them and has had done so many times. So I'm asking this board, how long is we gonna have to deal with this? Because obviously, he's not the right man for the job. He can't bring in staff. He don't know how to talk to people. And this is evident, and I've been waiting on this because we're going to keep on talking about this. There needs to be a new face in this department. We've been asking for it. We've been talking about it, and this board has not done anything. So I'm doing this tonight publicly. I am putting you guys on notice that I will create a petition and I will pass it around in this community. We want the HR department redefined, restaffed, and we need to put a new leader there.
Thank you, Ms. Edwards. I don't know if there was a question.
There was the first one.
Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
okay. So, couple things, Mr. Edwards. I took notes. If I missed something, take me back, okay? Because I was writing things down. So, I want to correct, and I'm going to own as a superintendent that Mr. Figueroa does not have the ability to put anyone in, when their investigation, to hold them within the HR department. That is a district practice that we've established and that we are looking at. So I have to state that I'm not going to put that on like he's just saying you need to go there. That's a district practice. Something that we have looked at is that if we cannot finish an investigation within 30 days, then you get to go home and stay home until we complete the investigation. So please know, I'm going to own that from us at the district level, right? So, hold on, I'm losing my train of thought. Just so you have an understanding there where that comes from. And that is something that we're looking at. How do we do that? It's a fine line. So when we're going through investigation, does an employee get to stay at home? Is there benefit for them being here at work? It's all something that we have been discussing. That's number one. Hold on, the second one. I think that was the one that I could touch on. Did I miss something else though? Did you ask a second question? Because I know that one was the one I wrote down.
No, but I want to rebut with what you said, and I appreciate you finally telling me this, right? Mm-hmm. Because I've been to several meetings and I've talked about this. And why is this a concern for me? As somebody that has been through the Illinois Department of Corrections, the prison system, right? One of the things that they do to inmates is place them in a room that is empty. That is not the way we should be treating people. We are messing with people mental like that. And so the second piece to that, and we had a staff member that did more than 30 days down there.
Right. Yeah, no. And
you know what I'm saying?
That was probably prior to we did
right.
the 30-day.
Okay, and so I have to comment
right.
on that. And then the last piece to this, and I have to say this, and I ain't bringing this out, right? A lot of times when we do this, I see a difference based off skin color. I don't have my black book here, y'all, but as I go back and I got it, just about every staff name that has been downstairs in that room, they have personally contacted me and I've personally spoken to them. I even have pictures of the room. And so when we're doing this, on every level, y'all, I just want to see everybody treated equally. But sometimes I feel like African Americans is treated worse. And that hurts my heart when I feel like that as somebody that's born and raised in the city of Waukegan. I've been more proud of this school district than most people that have lived in the city. I don't want to see that, y'all, because that has given this district a black eye. And when we try to get African Americans to come work here, this is one of the first things that they say to me. And I'm out and I'm trying to recruit. I want to see more people that look like me teaching my babies. I want to see more people, and whether they look like me or not, I want to see more people that is invested in Waukegan.
So, Mr. Edwards and Mr. Figueroa, I see you in the back. So the room is a conference room, and I've been into it. There's windows, there's a conference room table. Staff can go out. Am I correct, Mr. Figueroa? Unless you've taken, I thought so. Staff can go out for lunch. Staff, I mean, it depends. There was a case where we did revisit, like, how long does a staff member get to sit there? But I'll give you a hypothetical situation. So hypothetically, Ms. Placencia is a principal at a school, and I push Rayon Edwards, and you make an allegation against me. And so meanwhile that allegation is being investigated, it just depends on what the allegation is, right? But if there could be child endangerment or child endangerment, it just varies. Meanwhile, we investigate. At times, it's also for the protection of the own employee. Meanwhile, the investigation takes place to find out exactly what happened, right? Because, well, maybe you should have been the principal and I should have been the student. I could have said that you pushed me and then you really didn't push me once we start looking at cameras. But it does take time to get that investigation done. What I can attest to, and one thing that I have told my staff, is that we need to expedite those investigations or looking into different scenarios as fast as possible, right? Like, we can't just say, well, we have other things to do, and this sits there 20, 40, 60 days. So my directive, and being very intentional, is that when we get these investigations, that we're handling them with respect, with expeditiously as we can, so that the staff member is not sitting there, yet protecting the rights of the employee and protecting the right of
the impacted party.
Thank you, Ms. Lindsay. So that's the goal of it.
Okay, so I don't know when y'all changed it to a conference room, but I will not sit here and be lied to in my face, because that has not always been no conference room that they've sat in. I've been in this building, Ms. Placencia, numerous of times, and one time he wasn't in that office, and one of the staff members that was in that room took me back there. That was not a conference room that they were placed in. So maybe it's been changed, but that has not always been what he's been doing. And that's what I talk about. Because sometimes, dear, you may be busy or you may be out. And the same thing with your assistants, your deputies. And a lot of times we don't touch things that we normally don't do. But again, that type of practice right there, they use that in the prison system to mess with the mental. That is not healthy for people that has to work with our babies.
And the only reason I agree, Mr. Edwards, I think part of what they were balancing, and it's the conversation that we always have to have in the public square, is there are individuals that believe that for you to be compensated, you have to show up. And so while the individuals are going through an investigation, they're still required to report to work in order to be paid. That is a practice that was under this administration, and it was continued, right? The incident in the case that we both know that you're talking about wasn't the first person that impacted, and the superintendent's point of investigations taking too long, which was also identified in the report and the assessment, is a fact. Is sometimes we'll know a situation occurred where that, you know, and I'm looking at Mr. Vukovic, right, is there's not a dispute that this issue occurred. Right. And it'll still take a long amount of time to look at all the different angles and all the different places. And meanwhile, two things are happening. An individual is sitting who shouldn't be, right, because they're going to be exonerated, or an individual is sitting and the taxpayers are continuing to pay their salary when they should be fired, right? And so I just wanted to give you the context in that practice. While I can't speak to your experience, right, and what it would do to someone's mental, but the reason that they are still required to report to work is because there were concerns that, well, while that person's investigation, they're being paid to be at home. They being paid to, you see them down wherever you see them at, and during the workday. So we can look
Real
at
quick.
and have
So
a
I
conversation
guess
about
one
that.
of my concerns then will be then, and let me say that because maybe I should have been very clear with that. The individual that you guys may think that I'm talking about, I spoke about this even before that started happening with that particular individual, right? So I guess the concern would be is if we're doing that because we have had complaints about staff being down there, particularly with that particular individual, that director, maybe we should find another place to put them at then to avoid that type of thing right there. And I'm quite sure we can find something for them staff members to do, whether it's paperwork, filing, putting in information in the computer or something, versus just letting them sit there collecting taxpayer dollars. That's what I'm saying.
So that's a great idea, Mr. Edwards. And I got your first part about could the location change? And that's something, as we continue to strive to be better, that's something I'll keep at the forefront of my thoughts. The second part about can we give them other work? Contractually, we may, and contractually we may not, right? So you have to understand there's contracts that dictate. But in fairness and in full transparency, I also want to state that at times at times it could be, and at times it may not be HR holding up the process. There's many people that have to get involved, right? So it could be the legal department. It could even be the superintendent's office. It could be just the questioning of when we can get someone scheduled to have those conversations. So there's many variables at play here on timing and when something can move forward, when it can't, or why the timeline may be a little bit longer. So I do want to say that I don't want to place all the ownership in one spot, even though HR does lead some of these investigations, because other ones are Title IX and may go through the legal department, right? But just so you understand the different variables that are at play when something like this does take place.
Thank y'all for that. Going forward, when we have those concerns, that's all it takes, right? Is to explain that, y'all. I've been to many board meetings talking about this particular thing, right? And even though I don't expect you guys to talk to me about staff, but what you guys did tonight, that would have stopped me from coming to several board meetings speaking about that particular incident. It's just a simple explanation or explaining to us why something is happening or the process of something. So thank you.
Mrs. Sabecki.
I got one thing, and it's not about that topic. It's already been answered in that. My question is back to equity and inclusion in that. And it's retainment of our own staff and give them the opportunity to grow in our district. And I talked about this a couple meetings ago downstairs. Mr. LeBaron, you weren't there. With certain individuals that have been born and raised in this district, been in this district, working in this district, in an intern position of doing the head job in this district, in that department, and then they don't even get an interview and they apply for it. We already had someone selected. So it's the pick and choose, and we already have people for certain positions that we're already gonna hire, and we do a hiring practice, but then the other people that apply for those positions don't even get, and they're in the district working, doing that position, don't even get an interview. It's wrong. And that particular position I'm talking about, the dude lasted 7 months. And guess what? That position's still vacant today. If that other guy would have got the interview that was doing the job for 8 months, guess what? That position probably wouldn't be vacant now. He'd probably still be in this district. That's my point.
Thank you, Mr. Sabecki. Ms. Lindsay?
So I have a couple of questions and comments around this, and some of it will tie back to Mr. Edwards and Mr. Sabecki's points. Just a general question, big picture, 3 to 5 sentence answer if you need it. So what did we learn from this audit? And let me be more specific and transparent. What did we learn that we didn't already know?
So
That's a good point. Can I speak to that?
Go ahead.
Is that fine?
Yeah.
I think where I'm getting tripped up with is that we didn't already know, because we can assume, or the perception is, I know, we got to get tighter on our process. And so what does our process look like? And stick to our process. And our process can't be word of mouth or this is how we've always done it. It needs to be standard operating norms of this is how we do. It's written down. And another thing that we found out is the process changes from one individual to another. And I know the confusion comes from, so where is the operating manual of this is how we do it? So as a district in HR, we need to get better at our process, and this is how we do the work, and defining how the work is done now in comparison to the HR that has been in existence. Because though recruitment has changed, Mr. Figueroa, if I misstate something, please jump in. Though we have been very innovative on how we tap into other resources for staff, whether it's teaching, you've heard about we're trying to tap into nursing. I know they're looking into social work, right? We've been very innovative there. We have some very antiquated practices that we have been doing forever, even before Mr. Figueroa even took the position, and we've continued to do them. So we have to own that we've continued to do that work that way, and it needs to be changed in order to bring, I'm going to say, stability, consistency, and coherency to the system. That's number one. Number two is that I'm going to change my wording because words matter. I know that we need to have a strategic, and I'm going to say plan, but we need us to have a way on how we are going to recruit. And I know a lot of this is virtual now from surrounding areas, and how we're tapping into surrounding universities for student teaching or observation hours, so that Waukegan becomes the choice of being home here. The third piece, and I'm just naming some big items because I learned a lot from this. Another is that my third piece would be hiring, like we've heard here, is like, okay, well, who's the hiring manager? The hiring manager could be in ASOP academics and say, I'm hiring for our new area superintendents. They'll lead that, they'll come up with the questions, but I believe there needs to be a very standardized process on how we're hiring, recruiting, retaining all staff, and that has to come from HR, and it shouldn't vary from school to school, principal to principal, division to division. My last piece of this, which is not eye-opening to me, we're very reactive instead of proactive, and that's what I've taken from the report. I also think HR should be about ensuring that our staff feels unified with the district or have ownership in the district and have that feel good, like health wellness, mental wellness. Like, what are we doing there to engage our employees outside of when you come to HR, it's only for insurance, or it could be because you're moving to a different position. But what in that scope of work are we doing on the well-being and the morale for our staff? And that does need to be a stream of work that comes out of HR. Now, when they say that there should be 1 to, what was it, 200? What was it?
150.
150. I don't know how reasonable that is because, the counseling model is 1 to, what is it, Eduardo, off the top of my head? Is it 250 or?
Caseload?
Yeah, and I know we don't follow that because it's so low, right? So I don't know if we'll ever get the 1 to 150 in HR, but I do believe that we need a designated person for employee relations is what I'm saying on how is the morale going, the exit and the onboarding. And I would also say that whole HR recruitment piece, the onboarding for every employee looks very different depending on where you work. So in ASAP, Eduardo may have a very strong onboarding process, but that doesn't come from HR, it comes from ASAP. And it should all stem from an HR on, this is how we onboard, these are the mandatory classes, this is how every personnel file. So I think a lot of standardization, communication, employee relations, and definitely defining what is our process in writing, what is our HR recruitment strategy, not just internationally, but just not through the internet. What are those point of contacts? All of that, I think, is not something that I can say we were remiss on. It just really solidified that, yes, it's the gallbladder. It's your gallbladder. We really need to focus in on that. I'm just using a physical term. So that to me was eye-opening. Did you have anything? I see you wanted to say something. That's why.
Yeah, and so I was gonna say the same thing, just in fewer words, but also
It was helpful,
sorry.
Superintendent.
It was good that you went through that detail because the only thing I wanted to add is perception is reality. So if certain procedures are not properly documented and beyond documented, communicated and trained to staff on a regular basis, whether it be onboarding or annual training, then there is a perception that we don't know what we're doing, or certain people are going through a process. Superintendent mentioned onboarding process one way versus another way, department to department, staff to staff, and that's something that we obviously do need to improve. And one way to do that is standardization of processes and ensuring that everybody is aware of what they are. We should not have staff members asking, what do I do if I get injured, things like that. And they exist. Sometimes it's not a matter of it not existing, it's just a matter of communicating on a regular basis so people know where to find the resources.
And the last point is that we have a 48-hour protocol of when an email comes into HR that someone should get a response. And we could do a better job of that in HR and across the district. Because I've had employees reach out to, I've been emailing a specific specialist, I'm not getting a response back, right? And that causes frustration, it causes distrust. It's just not a good look. Now, will some things fall through the cracks? We're human. I make errors. Everyone does. But it shouldn't be that if I send something, it's going to take me 100 times to get a response, or that it has to go to the board president and sent down to get a response, right? Or a board member is what I'm saying. So I'm seeing all of this. I know I've been talking longer than I usually, just to be very transparent, that we know there are some issues, that they've been identified, that we are going to create a plan on how we're going to get better, and I'm going to hold my team to that plan, that we're executing with fidelity, and ensuring that our staff is getting what they need, but also giving HR what they need. Like I said, that employee relations piece, we may have to hire somebody for that, because the way it's staffed now, I don't know who would do that or who would own that, right? But just all of that, the welcome letters, or hey, you're coming back this year, your school is that, all that feel good, that who I am as your
Connection
employee.
building.
The connection, yeah.
Okay. The reason I'm asking, and I really do appreciate the full perspective, both on you, Superintendent, and your addition, Mr. Moten. The reason I'm asking is because, and I believe in transparency, I believe in honesty, it's what I campaigned on, and this is what I'm going to specifically talk to. This is something that has been brought to that podium multiple times. It has been something that I, even when elected as a board member, have talked about standard operating procedures. These are not new components to me. So this report gives me mixed feelings, because I am frustrated that this has been said without spending the resources to acquire this report, but I'm also happy because it validates a lot of what I perceived in the district, what I've heard in the district, what I've heard from that podium. So it's good that we have it now, but please understand that there's going to be frustration from the staff because they have been saying this. So wanted to be very clear and honest with myself as an individual with regard to that. I am really excited for the employee resource groups. That is a component at a corporate level. There are business resource groups to support individuals as they move within larger organizations. And we have just 2,000 teachers, right? So we have a lot of employees in our district, because if that's just the teachers, then you have all of our support staff and our administration, everyone. So to have that connection, that's going to build more community within our district. So I'm very excited for that. What else was I excited about? I think a lot of these pieces just tie back to that professional learning organization, which is something that I talked about when we came back from CUBE. And Dr. Patrick Rice has a book on it that I passed out to a couple of board members. It ties back to that. So that's something that we could also look to leverage as well. When we are talking about these components, to Mr. Sebecki's point, the DE&I, right? So it's in our steps for one of the components, but as we look to standardize questions in our hiring process, I don't see mention of going to Dr. Fields to check to make sure that the questions we're asking are DE&I compliant, are making sure that we're thinking of everyone and we're asking, who am I leaving out of this conversation, or what skills do we want? I know there are mixed feelings around DE&I work, because for some it's just become like this hot button word that we want to address, but it really is important to make sure we're doing it, to the superintendent's point, with fidelity. I'm back to the investigations that Mr. Edwards had brought up. I'm very excited to hear that we're going to have more targeted conversations on structure around that process. My hope is that if someone's safety is involved, that is, if we're looking at priorities or tiers in which we need to address the investigations, that anything revolving safety is prioritized, both for the staff that may have to be removed from the situation because they're under investigation, and for the impacted party. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what that structure is going to be, if not communicated to the community for restrictions on communications or privacy levels, then just as a board. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that as we transition to these next steps, right, and getting that strategic plan, which we've also been saying, in place, there is a level of distrust, whether people are coming to the podium and outright saying it and having it on the record, or just communicating amongst themselves within the district. There unfortunately is a level of distrust. So I like having an employees relation person in place, but I think there needs to be some sort of transition plan. We had previously talked about having, or it was previously mentioned about the possibility of having a third-party line to call in and report things, so that it's, as we work to rebuild trust with our staff, there's still an avenue to communicate any issues that they have. And then that way we can start to get a clear picture of what the employee satisfaction survey is looking like. And as we start to see increased morale and trust that their situation is going to be handled appropriately, we can essentially shift the balance away from this third party to communicate issues to. That's just another suggestion as we start to build out a plan for it.
Mr. Vukovic? You have the mic.
You know, there's been enough said about the individual that's in the position now. I'm not saying anything there. It was noted in this report that we have a decentralized system. So there's certain things that happen in his department, but there's far more things going on in buildings and other things. And I'm going to rip a Band-Aid off here and talk about something that it's an old subject. It's near and dear to my heart. And you know the way my wife was treated by this administration? And we've got emails from the superintendent to the area superintendent saying, I thought we were on the same page about Mrs. Vukovic. And then we've got, you know, my wife gets interviewed, and then they repost a position where the area superintendent reaches out to somebody else who hadn't even applied and said, why don't you apply? And guess what? She got the job. You have that kind of stories like that all over the place. And you all, those of you that were on the board at the time, you all know, and most of you just put your head in the sand, but there's stories like this all the time in this district that you've got to get your hand around, because you're never going to be able to keep people if you treat people that way.
And I got one more thing on that, kind of like that topic. I actually did sit on an interview committee within our district. It was for assistant principal position. And after, you know, we asked our questions, the candidates left in that. One of the questions was, yeah, I think we should hire him. He's hot. Really? That's what we're going off of? And it happened. Don't tell me it didn't happen. And it happened under this administration, because I sat on that committee. And I was in that room asking questions. And that's the stuff I'm talking about. We need to make sure stuff like that is not happening.
Point noted, but I will state, Mr. Sabecki, when you sit on an interview committee, that's whatever happens there is supposed to be is confidential. And my understanding is you sign an agreement for that because there's people going through it. So just so you know, when we're going through an interview process, I don't know what interview committee that happened or who stated, but you could speak with Mr. Moulton after this and he can look into it, because this is the first time I'm hearing that.
Yeah, I just had a similar experience. Boy, it's great to be back, because now all the memories come back. Okay. I specifically remember Mr. Vukovic was his wife and all that injustice that occurred. But I was also on an interview committee, and the bottom line is just a farce. All the sheets, you know, we wanted them to tally them up. And what happened was, and I can't remember who was the person who was in charge of it, just grabbed all the sheets. It was already a done deal. They already selected the person. So why did they waste all the community person's time if the sheets went to pitch them to the garbage and they already had selected the person? So obviously controls and balances are missing here. I will share what happened at the Park District, very similar to the scenario that Ray Edwards mentioned. And we did an investigation. And what it came out was the human resources person would take the applications, and if it wasn't the person they wanted, literally just threw them in the garbage can. Okay? So apparently there's no accountability, you know, for each application and what happens to it and what processes it go through, because I do hear many of the complaints that they're being said here, and it just continues on. Okay, I'm sorry, your person in human resources, he needs to retire. I think that if you want change, sometimes you need to replace the person.
All right, so Board of Ed, as mentioned by Ms. Lensing, if you guys want to see the report in its entirety, right, that is available in the legal office.
Jump to 5D.
Yep, so if we can go to 5D. So 5D is approval of facility rental waiver request for D, approval of facility rental waiver request for Juntos for the Viva la Independencia parade. The recommended action is there. The waiver information is there. Yep. So is there a question related to this item?
Si puedo hablar en español.
Yes.
Bueno, mi.
One sec, so we can make sure we have the translator.
Is there a translator here? I can translate if necessary.
No, the superintendent will. Yeah.
Pero despacio, okay? So no quiero faltar nada que tú estás diciendo.
Sí, estaba viendo en la hoja que la organización Juntos está preguntando por un waive para los permisos para el parade de Independence Day, algo así.
Yeah. So she sees that the organization Juntos is asking for a permit or waiver for the parade.
Mi pregunta es, ¿se puede aplicar por un waive si en el parade estás preguntando por $400 por participante?
So can they ask for a waiver for 400? ¿Cuánto, señora?
400.
400
por cada
4,000 or
participante.
400?
400.
$450. Can they ask for the waiver for $450?
No,
What is
400. 4. 400.
Oh, 400. I'm sorry, 400.
Sí, por persona, por cada participante, y están diciendo en la aplicación que es gratis.
So she's saying they're asking for 400 for people to be part of the parade, and in their application they're stating it's free. ¿Estoy bien? Gracias. Disculpe con la 400.
Do we want to get that answer, Deputy Moulton?
We can, if you could assist me, Superintendent, we can certainly look into that because you are accurate. They do represent it as free of charge to participate in their application.
So él dijo que si se mira como es gratis para participar en la fiesta, y él va a preguntar la cuestión a el Juntos, que yo no sé quién es, pero sí.
Porque yo he visto que estaba publicado ya que están cobrando $400.
She says because it's public that they're charging $400.
Okay. So if I could just read, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong. So in the waiver application, the question is, will district students, organization, club, or department benefit from this event? Describe, and the response is volunteer opportunity to participate free of charge in the parade. I believe.
So está diciendo, can I see that? Está diciendo que la aplicación dice, wait, did you highlight it? Si estudiantes, organizaciones, clubs y departamentos van a benefit del evento, y dice que sí, y dice que volunteer opportunity to participate es gratis en el parade. So si quieres volunteer, dice que es gratis. Si quieres mirarlo, señora. Can you show her that? Can you show Ms. Carrasco that, please? Is that, Ms. Carrasco, is that what she's talking about, that line right there?
It says, will you be charging fees? And then they say no, and that's inaccurate.
So, Mr. Moulton, can you look into the question about will they be charging fees? Because her statement is that they're charging $400.
I can send you the printout. Oh, there he goes.
Yo estoy
They have it
diciendo,
on the
yo
website.
le dijo que si puede mirar eso porque dice ahí que no van a cobrar, pero usted está diciendo que van a cobrar 400. So, él va a hablar con ellos mañana para ver qué está pasando. ¿Está bien? ¿Tienes otra pregunta o no?
Estaba escuchando a la señora que pasó hablando acerca de después del COVID, como sus hijos, ella como estaba al pendiente de sus hijos, y
She says she was listening to the lady that was speaking about how her children were doing after COVID. Okay.
En ese momento yo pensaba yo tuve mis hijos en todas las escuelas de Waukegan, gracias, dos están graduados, y estaba yo recordando que no pude empoderar a mis hijos porque mi problema es el idioma, por venir de otra cultura.
So she says that she's had her children in Waukegan Public Schools, and then after COVID, she also had a hard time pushing her students because of the language, la lenguaje, ¿no?
Sí. Yo pienso, eso solamente es mi opinión, pero yo pienso que sí deberían tener más traductores para los padres o enseñarles a los padres hispanos, por lo menos, cómo poder empoderarlos.
So she says that she believes because of that we should have more translators, or we should teach our parents how to better support their students.
Y también los programas que hay para poder empoderarlos, especialmente los padres.
And programs for the parents so that they could help support their students.
Entiendo que los hijos van a aprender el idioma de inglés por lógica, porque están en las escuelas, pero los padres a veces es difícil ya cuando tienes que trabajar para darle soporte a ellos.
Yeah, yo entiendo. So she says she understands that students will learn English meanwhile they're in school, but it's very difficult for parents because many of them have to work.
Eso es mi opinión y creo que puede ser importante para quitar a muchos jóvenes hispanos de mi parte de las calles o de las gangas, que es el problema mayor, creo yo.
She says that's my opinion, and I also think it would be beneficial because it will help students stay off the street or get involved with gangs.
Eso es todo.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you. We can, just to respond to the initial point, we can look into this before we bring this back to the board.
Él dijo que va a mirar la aplicación antes que lo trae para atrás a la Board of Education. So va a mirar. Y si tú puedes dar tu número de teléfono para él te puede hablar qué está pasando con la aplicación. So I told her that we're going to contact her, we're going to take her number, and we'll let her know what our finding is in regards to the application of it being free versus the $400.
Yo pienso ahí que puede estar malentendido lo que ellos pusieron.
She said it may be a misunderstanding.
Porque como voluntario puedes participar, pero no como participante ya del desfile.
So she thinks it may be a misunderstanding. Mr. Moulton va a hablar con ellos y nosotros hablamos con usted. Alguien que pueda hablar en español te va a contactar. Okay, gracias por venir.
Ms. Carrasco, then Mr. Edwards.
Okay, just a couple things here, just really quick. Fiestas Patrias, our organization that we've been doing it for years, and we will continue to do it no matter what. We don't need no permit for Ann Taylor, believe me, I assure you, and we'll be 5 times as big. Okay, it's our culture, it's our tradition, and no one can take it away from us, and no one's going to take it away from us. So just wanted, you will be seeing a lot on it, but. In December of 2023, Fiestas Patrias applied for those permits for Miguel Juarez, Abbott Middle School, and also for the high school. And it was put on the agenda here. You all voted on it, and it was approved. Okay? So then it's a mandatory requirement to have those permits, to include it in the system in order to submit the parade application. Mandatory, okay? So when the January 6th, whatever that magic date came, we could not apply because it could not be on the agenda. We were told that, with the holidays and everything like that, okay, that they had to postpone it to the following one, and the soonest they could get it on the agenda, Ms. Chavez over in operations, who's no longer in that position, she said that the soonest they could get it on the agenda was going to be like the last meeting in January, okay? January 24th, thank you very much, okay? So we accepted that because it is what it is. We applied in December, and they said the earliest we could get it on approval would be in January 24th, okay? So it was impossible for us to submit the application to the city without your approval of the permit, okay? So then we get the city telling us, oh no, we already gave the permit. How could you have given the permit if they never applied for the staging permits with you? It was a lie. And so we have now the copy, and we just blasted this out right now, the agenda today, where they are just now, June, applying for that permit for the staging sites, meaning they falsified, either they submitted fraudulent documents back in January because it was impossible for them January 6th to submit their application because you still have not even approved it yet. Then, wait,
No, I
and it
got
gets
it.
even better. You know, I feel sorry because it's not the school district's fault. It's not. It's not you guys' fault. You're kind of like in the middle, okay? Then I get an email from Waukegan Public Schools employee telling Fiestas Patrias, oh, you know what? George Bridges, City of Waukegan, just called us and told us to take the permit away from you guys. What? The city is telling you what to do? That's illegal. He doesn't have authorization. You're the board members. It's your decision, not George Bridges at City Hall. He called me numerous times. He approached our members and said, if you guys want the parade, you have to support Ann Taylor for mayor. We refused. We said we're neutral. We are not supporting absolutely no one. And so that pissed him off. And he goes, well, then you're not going to get the parade. So there's just so many variables. I'm just asking to be fair and try to stay out and understand there's a lot of different things. And unfortunately, now we're at this point that I get an email that we're taking the permits away from us. Like, why? You know what I mean? When these guys, we could have submitted the application January 6th, submitting fraudulent documents. Apparently that's what happened. Because how come they're just now asking you for approval? That means in January they submitted fraudulent documents. How can that be allowed? See, no one knew, but now it's all coming out. And so now, and you're telling us you're going to take it away from us? You approved it. We're having a parade in Waukegan, I assure you. We're going through. So the fact that Carolina, as I know is with them, she should never have voted. That's a conflict of interest. She's on their committee, okay? And saying, well, you're not going to have a parade? Watch me, honey. Oh, yes, we are. Thank you. Oh, and the other thing is Buddha football. I have here for the Illinois Secretary of State, Buddha football newspaper, Buddha football news, Buddha football online, all that. And I say, you have the paper downstairs. That legally belongs to Fiestas Patrias members. And I think we've had this discussion before. I think I forwarded the legal documents on it. And you continue to make payments to them. You continue to promote it. Well, that too is coming to a head. So I'm just reminding you once again, Oscar Cepeda is not the legal owner of Buddha football. None of that. Just Buddha football soccer. Buddha football soccer, he is the owner of. That's it. So I don't know, school district, you know, you're kind of like in the middle, I think. It's not your fault, but you know, you just need to be cautious, okay, of what's, cross your T's and cross your I's and check into the legalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carrasco. Mr. Edwards.
I want to touch bases on this because I spoke about this at one of the last meetings when I talk about the renting of facilities and spaces and things of that nature and why it should be a process for everybody. I remember this so well because it was a big old thing at the city of Waukegan, and I believe I had spoke to a couple of board members, and I told you guys that Carolina was at this meeting with them, and she spoke out against this group. This is why I feel this is on this agenda. We got to start learning how, because even when she goes speak at these meetings, she can speak as a citizen, right? But it's kind of hard for us to separate the fact that she's on this board. And then to see this, when we know she's a part of that committee, when we also know she has supported Ann Taylor, there has been meetings, you know, at some point a conversation has to be had about that. And we have to consider that. And again, I'm not saying that she can't go to these meetings and speak because she lives in this community. So her opinion does matter, right? Her voice needs to be heard. But again, when you guys do certain things as an elected official, it's hard for us, the community, to separate the two.
And again, she came to the city and spoke out about this group, particularly during this parade. She spoke out personally about this woman and said some things on the mic, and I can find the city meeting and send it to you guys. And so now we're here to see this on the agenda, you know, when you guys had already approved it for them. And so I'm trying to understand, why would anybody even allow them to fill out this application, or how did they get to fill out this application when you already guys got an approval for these particular spots? They shouldn't have never been able to submit that application, because somebody should have called it and say, on this date, these permits has already been issued to somebody else. But as a board member, I can call somebody in the district and I can get things done because of who we are.
Right.
And I think this may have happened in this situation.
My
Mr. Riddle.
recollection isn't perfect, but I know we're talking about this. When that resolution was passed, I think we could look back on it. I know it was subject to the city's approval, that the resolution was drawn up that, you know, we knew there were going to be two competing groups, and so we could look that up. But I'm not sure what we're doing tonight here on discussing this particular issue with D.
So there
Board
has a waiver, right? So the reason that it's coming forward is because it's been submitted, right? And so Ms. Carrasco has raised a separate point that has
Right.
nothing to do
With what's here.
with
We're the middleman.
us, right? We are the middleman. And essentially, to Mr. Edwards' point and to your point, we approved it contingent on the city's approval. They,
right.
to
And the
date,
city's-
and I'm for clarity, right? And I want to Fiestas Patrias to date, because of whatever is happening at the city, have not been able to procure a permit. But Ms. Carrasco also pointed out to the board
Right.
that part of her application to the city required her to show proof
Right.
that
From
she
you
had
guys.
these things reserved, which she would have been able to provide with
Right.
our action that we took in whatever we took.
Right.
And so that's where we are. So where the board
So we're in
is,
the
we're
middle.
trying to
Yeah,
stay
we're in
out
the
of
middle.
it.
We're in the
Again,
middle.
there's going to be a parade.
Yeah.
And I think we are generally supportive of, we want to see it happen. We know this is a big
Sure.
part of our community. And we don't want to be a middle person, but it's kind of up to the organizers to figure out what's going on with the city, Mr. Moulton, to get clarity. And our response would be the same, as whoever holds the permit should, because it's hard to say you get the parking lots, but then you're the person that can
But
legally do the parade.
I have a solution to it. There's many other sites, alternative sites, that they can reserve and are available, you know what I mean, and can utilize. So it's not like these are the only ones, you know what I mean? So I mean, there is other options, and I think that those are open and no one's using them, and so why not explore those other options. And the second thing is, and I'm so glad Ray mentioned this, last year we asked first for the ROTC to participate, as they do every year in the parade. We think it's really great to showcase the kids. Carolina Fabian went and told them, you cannot come out in Carrasco's parade. I think that's very immature, irresponsible for a board member to go and target groups that were participating in our, I mean, there's many persons who participate in the both, you know what I mean? And that's fine. You know, we did not say you cannot come out on a parade because you're coming out on the other parade. You know, that's very silly. But I think it's silly for her, after they committed to us, to forbid and ban groups, and I don't know if the board members are aware of this, telling them, schools and everything, that they could not come out in our parade. Well, you know what? In life, there's someone more powerful than any board, and that's God. And God punished them, and that day it rained in Port, and there's a reason why. Okay? When you do evil, that's what happens.
But Ms. Carrasco, and that's the thing, I know Ms. Fabian is not here to defend herself this evening, so I am going to ask, like, if there are accusations, right? I don't know. So, again,
So,
I
real
do wanna
quick,
go on record.
it is the recommendation that this Board of Education authorize the superintendent to approve the faculty rental waiver request submitted by Fiestas Patrias. Fiestas Patrias has reserved the parking lots of Abbott Middle School, Miguel Juarez Middle School, Washington campus to stage floats, equipments, and personnel for Fiestas parade in the city of Waukegan. The requested balance to be waived is $450. This request information was presented at OSC meeting on January 18, 2024 for future board review and action. So, Mr. Riddle, you saying that it was based on contingent?
No.
That's not.
No, the recommended action was, Ray, we already looked into it. It's on video. So I get that was posted, that was added. And you were here, I assume. But I know Mr. Vukovic was, where the recommended action, what we voted on, was subject the city approval. So I get, like, if we go there, but if you go to the date that we approved the minutes and it shows what the actual action is, or if you go and watch the YouTube video, the vote that we took is the motion was that. Those weren't minutes. That was what was on that agenda on that date.
Once again, the permit that is Carolina's qualifying them for and saying disqualifying us, right? Okay, for the city permit, was fraudulently attained because the mandatory requirement is to have the permit from you guys. They did not have it.
And that's my point, Miss. I don't know that part. That's between you and the city. So
and that ties back to the fact that we're the middleman, right?
Yes.
Like we can't control, because I believe Ms. Fabian did vote in favor of allowing it, right?
Oh, I'm sure.
And
she did. I mean, of yours. So
right,
regardless of what
yours.
you're saying, she voted.
Yeah, she's the one that put the contingency on. But anyhow, you guys are in the middle.
And yeah, so we're in the middle, and I think the thing is that we as the Board of Education, you know, we are the role models for the rest of the district, and we have to comply with state and local regulations. So if there's a parade that is going to happen, there has to be permits in place. So I understand that, yes, we have multiple locations that we can use to stage different floats, but if there's not a permit secured, I don't think legally we can host someone that's going to have a parade without the qualifying permits.
So
Okay.
I say let's get the clarification on
That's
that,
good.
and let's have it. I'll give Mrs. Sabecki the final word on this topic, and then it is 9:38.
Here, we can make this simple real easy. When people are applying for waiver requests, and those applications are not filled out completely, every line filled out, it should be rejected, not even come up to the board. Because we're purposely leaving key information out of all these waiver requests on the lines. You guys ask specific questions, and if you look at them, because there's another one on the next line for the soccer one that I have questions with, and they purposely leave stuff blank, or you can't read it. And if you can't read it, or if there's something blank and they're not being truthful, it should automatically be rejected. It should not come back to the board. You had the option, you lied on it, you didn't do it, end of conversation. You find out that they are charging fees, and they put on there that it's free, and they're not charging any fees, that's a blatant lie. It should be rejected. Make it fair to everyone. Like we talked about HR, SOPs, standard operating procedures. That's what we're talking about. Should be the same standard for everyone across the line, no matter what.
Thanks. So going back to the agenda item.
Thank you.
We got item. I'll go.
Are we jumping back to presentations?
Which presentation? It's 9:30. So I know it's a fair question, but I'm also letting the entire board and community know a lot of times this is. So I want to. Are there any, Mr. And I'll do this. I'm fine with jumping around. Does anybody have a specific question on a specific item?
I have one on the next one.
Well, would I call out the letter for me, Mr. Sabecki? 5E. So approval of the facility waiver request for Cosmos Way Soccer.
So if you look at that application, I don't know if it's different if you actually pull it up on a computer, but on my phone, there's certificate of insurance. I cannot read the date. It looks like it's expired to me. 2, it says, does it impact the students of this district? They mark no. Is there a fee? They mark no. They are charging fees to be a part of that program through the soccer that they're doing. I think what they understood when they charging fees to use the school field and that for a place to practice is what I think. Reading it, I think that's what they meant. But it says right in there, again, does it impact our students? And they mark no. So why are we giving waiver requests to people if it's not even impacting our students? According to them, it doesn't impact our students. So why are we giving waiver requests of entities that they make money off of?
Yeah,
those people paid for the soccer, so they shouldn't be getting the facilities for free.
I will give Brandon's opinion. I won't speak on behalf of the district. I have no idea who Cosmos is. I do know, and I'm gonna speak to me and Ms. Carrasco, is soccer is very important in our community, and a lot of times they're barely making, and and I'm looking at Mr. Edwards, right, with ammo and trying to come up with fees and presenting tournaments. So while they're, I know you know baseball. So while you're charging fees, right, you have volunteers, but you got a lot of other overhead that you have to pay for. And so I think ways that you can keep costs low is by asking for waivers. And so I'm a proponent of asking for waivers. I also think they're very wordy in their legal documents, and they're rightfully so. So to the same point that was brought up in some of the other things, does it impact students? We can interpret that as, do our students benefit from it? Others is, are you going to displace our students in order for this program to be able to participate? So I think clarifying that is always important. But I'm just speaking for Brandon. I'm a big proponent of waiver requests. I think the issue that we had before is there was a lack of transparency around them. I say that all the time. There would be some people on the soccer field that had gone through the process. There'd be some people that would just show up at a school, right? And so now, because everybody has to go through the process, it's coming up more frequently. But we can actually quantify to the taxpayer how much money we've used in order to allow our facilities to be used. And I personally, I'm a proponent. I think our schools need to be open earlier and later, and they should be benefiting the community. But we do want to have a process for how that goes. So I understand your point. We can get clarity, because I do think that the application has to be filled out correctly. So when the Board of Education is making the decision, they understand how and why they're making that decision, and that they have all the relevant facts.
And I just want to make sure these entities are part of our community.
Right, 100%. Like you say,
I'm the same thing you're saying. As long as they're part of the community,
Yep.
I'm all for it. But if it's outside people
Yep.
who wanted to come in, like when we had that female football
Oh, the
over
female-
at Weiss Field, that wasn't part of the community and stuff. That's the stuff I'm talking about. I'm all for letting anybody use our fields if they're part of the community. Because, again, I do run nonprofit baseball. Superintendent knows that she's been part of that organization for a long time, too. And, and that's how, like you said, we cut our over costs, because as more money that we can save, that's the lower cost it costs for the kids to play.
I want to have Mr. Edwards, because he's been waiting.
And I agree with y'all. It do cut the overhead costs, but just because it cutting the overhead costs, I want you guys to keep in mind, because you're saving them money does not mean that they going down on the prices that they charging these families and these kids. That's number one. Number two, I support what you're talking about 1,000,000,000%. But whether they from this community or not, if what they're doing is not servicing our children, because I'm going to go back to you, Mr. Riddle, what you said to that one group that wanted to come here and use the building and film and stuff. Like, we're helping you, right? And we don't mind doing that. But if that help is not benefiting our kids, which is who we're responsible for, it's a hard no for me.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying.
Fair point.
And Board President, maybe we could get clarification on that
That's
before
what
it
I'm saying,
comes
yep.
up. Yes,
Yep.
because it's Cosmos, it's listed in Waukegan. That doesn't mean they're servicing our kids. I agree with what's been said. Are they servicing our kids, and what are they charging those kids to go? Just so we have that information and it can be presented at the board meeting.
We will get that information.
I have two questions on this item, and then I want to, and I'll ask the board, because I want to be respectful of Mr. Figueroa's time, who stood here, and we've asked continually for a presentation on recruitment, and so recruitment is on there, but this is one of those things where we talk about the discussion.
Yeah,
So
I just want to, want Mr. Bolton here, the last thing, as long as you're looking into things.
Okay.
The two members there on the application, one lives in Wadsworth and the other one lives in Deerfield. Fiesta Spatches, we reside in Waukegan.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Carrasco, that was the superintendent was telling me something. Can you repeat for my benefit?
It was, who was saying about residing in Waukegan? Was it Randy was saying? And I agree with that. That when Mr. Bolton reviews, looks into the application, the applicants, one resides in Wadsworth and the other one resides in Deerfield. They're asking for that parade.
item
Okay.
D.
And Fiesta Spatches, we reside in Waukegan.
And we say reside, is that the organization, not the individuals? I want to make sure that the organization is listed as Waukegan.
The organization also does not have a Waukegan
Okay.
address.
Fair.
Thank you.
Yep.
We didn't forgot that.
What else am I looking at?
Sorry, I had one
Miss,
more.
go ahead, Ms. Lindsay. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. So if we're looking to update these forms, which, I mean, again, if we can get this to the 21st century and digital as well, not remove the paper copy, right? Because we want to make sure it's accessible to multiple people. That would be great. But if we're updating the form, if we're moving to a more standard operating procedure on these forms, you want to include which version this is, right? So having a date at the bottom for like this, job descriptions, everything, so you can track where in time, just like we do for our board policies, it was last updated, right? So then that way people can, one, make sure they're filling out the correct and most current form, and then two, see those changes through the years. So that's just a personal note. Right, yeah, like the date that it was updated. That's it.
Perfect. So, thank you. I'm going, it's 9:45 and I got 3 board members that are absent. What I will do in transparency, Mr. Vukovic, is because it was on this agenda item and you've made that request before, we're going to hold it superintendent for superintendent time. Mr. Figueroa, I do apologize. You know, it's 9:45. You have to sit here for us to call it. But I think it'll be more productive if we can have the conversation next Tuesday at our regular board meeting. Mr. Vukovic, I will change our protocol or procedure that if anybody had a question related to that item, they'd be able to ask it, because I know many people came here to speak on that topic, right? So with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Oh. Okay, I do. I asked if, do you have any other, go ahead, give me the letter.
You got one item, the $30 million bond, which I've spoken about before. I've been involved over my career on a number of public bonds, and I know that some of the staff met with the bonding company underwriters here recently, and I know, you know, there's a lot of things that have to go into that. There's a lot of documents from the finance office, which, you know, they'll get that finance reports. But one of the things that they require are minutes of meetings. So don't blow this by not having minutes approved, because when you have to have them available for it, they have to be approved by the board. So just keep that in mind. The other thing was you got an item under for 214 Washington Street. First glance, it looks great. You know, you're within budget. But there's one item that's a little concerning. Furniture. Last year you were estimating $400,000. Now it's $575,000. That's 43% increase. I know some prices have gone up, but you know, that's pretty steep. My only comments.
And I have one, and I'm gonna call that one out real quick. So I stayed for this one, and that is B. That 4% increase for these employees.
Oh yeah, we talked about that one. So you want to go back up to 4B, Mr.
Yeah,
Edwards?
I missed that one. Okay. I again, we're talking about non-union members. When they did the assessment, the pay scale and everything, a lot of people got a raise. And we knew this was going to come back. And some of them same people now finna get another one. I'm really asking y'all to start thinking about these things, because when you do this, you are speaking volumes to those other employees, especially the safety, man. And I get I do understand that, right? But I'm just saying, y'all, we watched a few employees just get hired, and we already said a 4% increase, and we know that's after the year, right? But we haven't even assessed to see what they're doing to even know if they're going to earn a 4%. And a lot of times we keep people because we can't replace them.
So we let people stay in those positions just to keep them filled. And so again, y'all, we finna take out this 30 million bond. Essentially, the taxpayers is gonna pay for that. And we've given out all of this money to the top brass, non-union members, and in the most respectful way, and no disrespect to anybody. Everybody have not earned that 4% increase. So when we're doing these things, I want to see individual employees assessed just like any other business do. Before we give them a raise or a promotion, we look at things. I don't think that's being done in this district. Seriously.
Mr.
That's
Edwards,
it.
I could help with that. So employees do go through an evaluation cycle. They do have a one-on-one meetings, coaching meetings with their manager. I'm going to say hiring manager, right? So it could be the associate soup, it could be a director. So there is an evaluation cycle. There's also KPIs that are identified for employees who may need some support. An employee can be put on a professional development plan, right? So that's to give an employee some support. So there are avenues for employees to be evaluated, employees to get support. This is a cost of living wage, and so you talked about how many employees got an increase with the salary. That was an equity increase, because what we found is that some of our employees were below other employees in that same area, and they looked out not only in Lake County, but they did an assessment from other school districts. So I believe, how many employees were included? I don't want to say.
I believe it was 16.
16 employees received an increase. So this amount of people would be, how much is it? Is it 81 or 74? What is it?
It's 231 staff.
231. 231 staff. 231 staff members, sorry, I'm getting tongue-tied, would receive a cost of living increase, and contractually in the contracts, every group does get, I don't want to say a raise, I'm going to call it a cost of living increase, and that varies from contract to contract. So these employees have not received their cost of living increase. I want to address a second point that you made. So employees who just recently got hired will not get the 4%. They would get, so we just recently, I'm going to use them as an example. We just hired 2 associate superintendents. They would have to wait till next year to receive their cost of living increase on their anniversary date, but because their anniversary date is so close to the July 1st, that would be when their increase would go into effect. So if they've just recently been hired, they just don't automatically get that 4% increase. They have to be here a year.
Well, I'm gonna say
just
this,
for clarification.
right, and I appreciate that. And the last comment of the night, thank y'all for this. This has by far been one of the best meetings I've attended. The most communication from you, and tonight you made me like you some. I don't want to regret that now, but that's the truth. Good night.
With that, I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn. Motion by Mr. McBride.
Second.
Second by Mr. Riddle. All in favor signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Meeting is adjourned.